You did
Should
all
we,
right.
should we,
You did it.
did
You
we
did
stream
it.
the last one? Okay.
We could just stay here.
Okay, I will call the Charter Revision Public Hearing, July 18th, to order at 6:30 PM. We can do the Pledge of Allegiance now before the next meeting. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, notice is hereby given that the Board of Selectmen of the Town of Southbury will hold a second public hearing on Thursday, July 18th, 2019 at 6:30 PM in Room 205 in the Southbury Town Hall, 501 Main Street South, Southbury, in accordance with the requirements of the Connecticut General Statutes 7-191B for the purposes of hearing comments on the proposed changes to the charter. Copies of proposed changes are available at the Southbury Town Clerk's office and in the Town Hall, on the town's website. Dated Southbury, Connecticut, this 10th day of July 2019. So if anybody would like to come forward to discuss the proposed changes to the town charter. If you could give us your name.
Barbara Wheeler, Heritage Village. This is my own personal opinion, which I've had for years and years and years. I think the people, the voters, need to have a say. And by expanding the terms, they have to wait 3 years. I think it should be 2 years. I understand that sometimes you're going to have all new people at this table, but you won't next year, so, that's one thing to think about. It doesn't happen that often, you have all new people. The voters need to have a way to say, give their opinions.
Thank you. Thank you. Another, somebody like to speak about the charter change? Harmon?
I'm Harmon Andrews, 554A Heritage Village. I've been a resident of Southbury for 50 years, and your former first selectman back in the 80s, and on the board for 10 years. In looking at the charter revision, which we do every 5 years, a few comments. Number one, on the first selectman, when I was there, I thought, gee, I need 4 years, I need 4 years, I need 4 years. After 20, 30 years of seeing the town vote every 2 years, we got Arthur O'Neill every 2 years. I go back, and I would recommend that we stay with our 2-year re-election format. And I thought hard about 4 years, but I think it's, you bring the town and volunteers together, you do your competition, we do the vote, and I think it's healthy for the town to review the first selectman's job every 2 years. Do you want me to talk about the other items, or just
That's fine, sure.
follow the,
No.
okay. As far as the separation of selectmen, I was in that position, and I decided to stay on. I got more votes than anybody else, except Roger Clisherman beat me by 40 votes. I had the opportunity to resign if I didn't think I could contribute anything, but I decided to stay and work with Roger, and I worked very well together, and I stayed on for 2 more years. So I think it's up to the losing candidate have the option of either continuing to resign or to continue to run, and keep it as a team of 6 selectmen. Back in the 70s, we went from 3 selectmen to 6 selectmen, and all kinds of combinations. I think that's a good combination, and I hope you'd stay with it, and that the losing candidate will have the option of either staying on to contribute. If he doesn't want to contribute, then he should step down. all appointments, I think the Board of the Board of Selectmen should be the hiring body, and emergency director or planning committee, I'm not sure that's applicable.
Harmon, could you say that again?
Addition of
Which one is this?
what's that?
Which section of the
Which
charter?
section are you talking about?
Emergency director.
Adding addition of a strategic plan commission, I don't think that's necessary. I think that should be appointed as a need periodically, but not as a standing committee. I'm on the planning commission now, and every 10 years, by law, we have to come up with a plan of economic, or a plan of development for the town of Southbury. And I think that should satisfy it. But if you want a real strategic plan, it should be done as an ad hoc committee appointed by the Board of Selectmen periodically. The language on the state trooper program, I'd recommend that there be no change. If we're going to switch to a state trooper program somewhere in the future, that's only a vote of the town, and you would change from the present state trooper program. And I'm not sure the language is going to help that. And as far as an EDC director goes, I think that should be a temporary job. Southbury has grown from 5,000 people to 20,000. The growth is pretty well completed. And adding more staff to the town hall, I don't think is necessary. We can hire people to come in and help us and do these things, but I think a full-time job, economic development director or human resource director, is unnecessary for the size of this town. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Harmon. Do we have another speaker on the change in the charter?
Ed Platt, 536 Spruce Brook Road. And I think that we should stay with a 2-year program for the Board of Selectmen. I've been around long enough to see 2-year terms that seemed like an eternity. And so therefore I think that should stay. My other problem is the Strategic Plan Commission. I'm not sure that we need a full-time strategic plan commission, and I'm concerned with the wording on it. Could you put that up on the? Let's see. It's on page 24.
508.
It seems to me that we have an opportunity for a strategic plan every 2 years when we elect the Board of Selectmen, and for the candidates to articulate their positions on the issues that the voters will feel important, and we can go forward at that rate. The state of Connecticut does not have a strategic plan. I don't know how many towns have strategic plans, but at any time, the Board of Selectmen can appoint a committee. But one thing that is really troubling here is that it's supposedly advisory, but then the last sentence there, after it says, and such other commissions, departments, or offices as a select board require as the implementation of strategic plan. That almost is mandating that the strategic plan be followed, and you're going to be advising planning commission? Are you going to supersede what planning is doing on their plan of conservation and development? And I've been around long enough, and we've got some people that are veterans on these boards and commissions, and to have an appointed committee advising people that, on the Board of Finance, for instance, John Michaels, who's been around forever, but I mean, there's a lot of people who are veterans on these commissions, and I think it's insulting to say that you're going to have a handful of appointed people advising these boards and commissions. And as I say, if you feel the need for it, fine, but I think it has to be clear that it's just advisory, and it can be a wish list, but it's up to the board and the Board of Finance to see if it's feasible to do these things. Thank you.
Thank you.
There's a large crowd. Is there anybody else who'd like to speak on the charter revisions?
Scott Furr. Oh, sorry about that. 124 Southwest Terrace. Section 202A, where you're recommending the change from 2 to 4 years for the Board of Selectmen. I would recommend against that. There's been some discussion about the continuity, about the fact that when you all came in office, you were all brand new. That's okay. That's what your departments are here for, and that's what your department heads are here for, to give you briefings, to tell you how things were done, and that's what their job is. I would recommend staying with the 2 years, and even if you have a complete turnover, those folks are still here to function, to provide you the background, to provide you the continuity. So I would recommend against 4 years. I would keep it at 2 years. It's like a 2-year job review. If you've done a great job, the voters will put you back in. If they feel you haven't, then they'll select a change. It's not a big deal. It happens all the time. So I would recommend against that. In section 507, number 9, I went through all the minutes and I could not find where this was discussed, but there's a change in the last sentence there. Section 507, number 9. I don't know the page, sorry.
Number 9, it's
Oh, right.
21 of 39.
Yeah, right.
There you go.
Right there. It talks about at the very bottom, the town attorney shall be appointed by the first select person with the approval by a majority of, instead of consultation with. Not sure why that was changed. I was trying to find the discussion in the minutes. I was just wondering why that was changed, what if there was an issue or what the direction was looking at that. And I would echo Ed Platt's discussion also on the Strategic Planning Committee to make sure that it is advisory. I see the positives of that committee. I see the positive of the strategic plan, but only if it's a roadmap that's laid out, not necessarily something you have to follow, because you might have to take an exit for some reason, like the finance board says, yeah, it's a great idea, but we didn't budget for it this year.
Sure.
So while there is some bonus there to have that, it should just be advisory only, and when the other committees are saying, hey, okay, we've got this thing in front of us, you guys had this in your strategic plan, where did you want to go with it? Is there a vision? So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott.
Okay, thank you. Yes, sir.
Rich Boritz, 401A, Heritage Village. And I want to talk about the strategic plan also, page 24 on the plan. And I believe the plan commission is a worthwhile commission, because what it can do is it could be an asset to the first selectman. With 105 recommendations, clearly not all of them are going to be followed. And when you look at your own position, when the 6 of you were elected, I would guess it took you 6 months to figure out what was going on in town and how to make things happen and who was who. And I think a strategic plan provides a framework for all elected leaders to listen to the experts and the best and brightest people in town, so that the first selectman will have an idea of where people want to go. Now, I understand it is advisory, so it's not going to make the first selectman do certain things. But what it can do is open up the eyes and ears of the board and make sure that the efforts that are being attempted by the board are coordinated in a collaborative way with all the other departments. Not to say that not to say that Board of Finance, you must fund this, but that this is the plan. What can we do to move forward? And I think it would be wise to keep it in there. There are many other towns, and if you go online, there are many other towns that have strategic plans, and they also have coordinators to make them happen. I can just give you one town. It's in Pennsylvania, Lancaster. It's a much larger city than this, but they've divided their strategic plan similarly to the way we have, three main issues. And the mayor there says he keeps his plan in his pocket. It's very simple. 3 main issues, and under each 3, there are 3 goals. He knows them all, so there are 9 goals. So you don't have to carry around an enormous document, because that gets left on the shelf. And with 105 recommendations, it'll be very clearly whittled down to the handful that you can actually achieve. Thanks.
Thank you, Rich.
Okay.
Robert Woodside, Brown Brook Road. I was here last month. I believe you had a similar hearing. And I highlighted some issues with our parks and open space and their management. I'm sorry to say I could talk all night, but I have lists of problems and issues with our town properties, and these are spectacular properties, but they're being poorly managed in many circumstances. I'm hopeful the charter revision will help lead us to an improvement. One of the things is that the Public Works Department is assigned to essentially serve the Conservation Commission and the Park and Recreation Commission when they have maintenance items or whatever it is. That process does not work very well. In the particular case of the Conservation Commission, very few things even get recommended, and very few things ever get done, and what is done sometimes is pretty poor. So what I wanted to point out is that the Strategic Plan Commission, and I have to disagree a bit with my esteemed neighbor, Mr. Platt, I think the Strategic Plan Commission is a valuable part of the overall town government. If you want good government, I think you need an advisory body like that. They have recently recommended the consolidation of the Conservation Commission and the Inland Wetlands Commission. At least there's a staff person there that could assist in organizing organizing things, perhaps getting Public Works to function a little better, a little more effectively. But currently, there's not even a liaison from your board to the Conservation Commission. I noted in your regular meeting agenda tonight, almost all of you are involved in these different commissions, at least kind of monitoring and working with them a bit. But conservation, even though they manage hundreds and hundreds of our precious properties, don't have that connection to you. The other thing I wanted to point out is that the Charter Revision Commission has recommended a study, essentially a task force, to look into this issue, see what can be done, what other communities have done, and how they could do it better. The last thing is, on your agenda, I noticed at the end you have an item for, I gather it's an encroachment, a tree cutting problem at an open space on Keeney Road. This is outrageous that this stuff happens. It's happened many times, and frankly, sometimes no one even notices it. In this particular property, the town secured 6 acres of open space through a subdivision, a set-aside, but it didn't appoint that property to any agency to manage. Some of the property lines were surveyed. It borders the state Aldo Leopold property, and some of us recently advised the state that it looks like there's been a massive tree cutting encroachment. And the state, I understand right now, is looking into it and trying to do some surveying. I hope that's what you guys are about to embark on, to determine just what happened there and how to stop it from happening again. This was a wonderful forest, like other places have been, just devastated. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Michelle Zomer from White Birch Drive. I'm submitting my remarks in writing as well as highlighting a couple things here. I have appeared at prior public hearings about revisions to the charter. One of the things I had not addressed before in detail was a new section. I spoke about it, but I didn't write about it. In Chapter 7, there is a new section added, 708. And it requires that all grant applications will henceforth require majority approval of two different town decision-making bodies. That would be the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance. And I'm really interested to understand the background on this new rule. Because in my view, this is very consequential. And so I'm interested to know what prompted this. I haven't read anywhere who came up with this rule or why. I'm also questioning why the Board of Finance would actually have authority over the Board of Selectmen in this matter, in any sort of grant application. It would seem that the Board of Selectmen should have final authority and the Board of Finance should have advisory authority on the money. I also believe that if any department or person in the government were to take the initiative to apply for a grant to get the town some new money for new services, et cetera, that the grant application, whether it's rejected, if it's rejected, should be accompanied with an explanation to the public. I also believe that both the Board of Selectmen and the Finance Board should have time limits placed on them, because grants are very often prepared with tight deadlines, and if that document doesn't get in the mail on the day it's due, it's dead. So a town governing body could effectively squash an initiative just simply by not responding to it in a timely way. And this very broad language in this section 708 puts absolutely no definition on any of this. I'm also going to mention briefly, I do agree that the first selectman job, which is a well-compensated paid position, should remain a 2-year position. I do also agree, I would suggest that the volunteers on the Board of Selectmen should obtain the benefits of a 4-year term. And I don't believe that they all need to be the same, especially since they are staggered already. I have previously, in writing and in public, stated my concerns about volunteer recruitment protocols. Southbury prides itself as a community run by volunteers, but there is precious little information or recruitment in place to get volunteers. And when you come to meetings like this, you see the same people over and over and over again, but at ShopRite, you see a whole bunch of other people. So I'm pretty sure if we had more recruitment in place and perhaps gave people more information about what the commitments would be so they don't feel overwhelmed by them, that we would get more people stepping up. And I provided a lot of details here in writing about that. I also believe that the two most consequential charter changes recommended, which would be this grant approval authority and the selectmen limits, that these be separated out on the ballot on November 5th. Because it concerns me that all the hard work of this commission and the many wonderful recommendations that are made to this document may be simply lost because too many people might disagree with one of these fine points, such as the term limits, which seem to get the most response online. And that's it. Thank you very much for considering my remarks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle.
Okay. Do we have anybody else? Big crowd? Charter revision? Sir?
Ed Naylor, Homestead Road. I agree that with this grant issue, that the Board of Finance should have an advisory role and not in any way supersede the Board of Selectmen. With regard to what you call yourselves, Select Board, in my opinion, is a very clumsy term. I personally, and I don't think Jennifer does either, mind the term Selectmen. You can call the first Selectman the chair. That's an androgynous term. My only other suggestion is to call yourself a board of directors, then you can all be directors of the town. I don't have a good alternative, but I just think select board doesn't ring well with me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, somebody else? I saw someone, I thought they were going to get up.
Hi, Emily Harrison, Jeremy Swamp Road. I think everyone has made some excellent points tonight. I'd like to comment on two things since we're already here. Changing to select person, I think it's important to note, of my understanding, that we would be the only municipality who is changing to this term. I agree it is very hard to get out there. It doesn't flow off the tongue. I think the other thing too is if our goal here is being inclusive, I work in the corporate world where we refer to our projects with men and women as chairmen. And so this is a term that I think we look at the Romance languages, right? We go back to when we're talking about groups of people, is to use that term. And that's okay. As a member of a group here that you feel like you're trying to make inclusive, I feel like you're going out of your way to make a special case for those that you're not including and therefore counteracting your original goals. As a member, again, of that gender that you feel you're not representing, I don't feel like the special treatment is appropriate or necessary. In regard to the Strategic Plan Commission, again, in my role in corporate America, we've done a few strategic plan implementations. I don't see that having that commission as a benefit, especially when we look at the cost perspective of it and wanting to make sure that we're not only just reprinting materials, but I think also we have people who here as the board serve as liaisons to committees and different organizations. Those heads, as we've talked, like John Michaels, they certainly know their departments in and out and would be able to tell you what is feasible and what is the best way to implement that. And so if we leave our selectmen as those that can go in and work with those teams, I think that's the best way to accomplish this goal in a timely manner and the most cost effective as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Any other public comment on the charter revision? Any other public comment? Just waiting, because sometimes people pop up at the very last minute. Get brave. Any other public comment? Okay, seeing none, we'll move to close the hearing. We'll close the hearing and we'll go on from there. Everybody all set with that? All right, we'll move on to the main event, the Board of Selectmen's meeting. I will call the Southbury Board of Selectmen's regular meeting to order Thursday, July 18th, 2019, to order at, oh, wait a minute. 30 seconds. 30 We're waiting.
30-second break.
30 seconds. We have 30 seconds. At 7 p.m. Very good. We've already had the Pledge of Allegiance. I just want to let everybody know Mike Rosen will not be attending tonight due to a minor medical issue. We wish him well, and he said not to worry about him. So we will do that, and we'll go on. So next on the agenda, we have done the Pledge of Allegiance, if that's okay, and we'll go to public comments, limited to 3 minutes per person. If you'd like to come up and make a public comment.
Again, my name is still Rich Boritz, and I live at 401A, haven't moved, and I am a candidate for the office of First Selectman. I am first, I do want to thank all of you for serving, and I'm so happy that everybody here is going to, has a good chance of continuing to serve. And there's nothing better for democracy than an open and vigorous discussion, which I look forward to. Now, at the last meeting, my public comments described my core principles that I thought to implement the strategic plan. Since then, I've had some feedback, and honestly, not all of it is supportive. Some people seem reluctant to embrace the plan, and I find this discouraging for a couple of reasons. First, failing to commit the town's recommendations will be dispiriting to the volunteers who serve not only on this board, but on every single board that the town runs. Shelving the plan will serve to disengage volunteers. Why participate if recommendations aren't going to be heeded? I don't think we can afford to squander the hard work and the goodwill of some of the best and brightest people in town. Second, the vision that we find in the plan, I think, will give the next First Selectman direction for leading the town forward. The First Selectman has been given tools to engage the town's employees, volunteers, businesses, and residents in a shared mission. One thing is clear, though. All of us who live in Southbury love it here. We love the lifestyle, the rural setting, convenience to shopping, quality schools, excellent public library, access to open spaces. It makes it hard to make suggestions for improvement when that's the case. But I'm going to try anyway. There are some takeaways. Southbury's economic growth lags behind comparable communities. In the past 25 years, our grand list has fallen from first place among these comparable communities to last. So what will I do to change that? Well, first, I'll hire an economic development director and give the task of inventorying and categorizing all of our available land and space that may be suitable for business use. Second, I'll coordinate with the economic development, the planning, the inland wetland and zoning commissions, as well as other town departments to make sure that new businesses can quickly open and have the least amount of frustration and red tape in doing so. And third, I keep it to 3, you see, I will, thanks, I'll continue this next time, thanks.
Thank you. Public comment? Any other public comment?
Joan Van Hardenberg, 1430 Jeremy Swamp Road. The handouts and photographs are the material that Paul and I discussed with the Planning Commission Tuesday night. Mr. Cotell told the commission that the Stone Arch Bridge had collapsed, and that is untrue as the photograph shows. The bridge is intact. The commission took our comments seriously, and because of the obvious conflict of information, asked many probing questions. They could reconsider their decision to close the road. I urge all of you to read carefully the handout, which goes back to 2012. Recent history. A tree was uprooted at the edge of the road prior to the tornado. Afterwards, we and others drove on the road for well over 6 months. We always wondered why the rut on the edge of the road had not been fixed, and then suddenly, without any notification, the barriers went up. I don't understand the push to close this beautiful historic road. In 2012, we were told it was because of dumping. The board at that time ultimately voted 5-1 to keep the road open. Now it is because of rut, which could easily be repaired and should have been repaired months ago. We were told that 20 cars a day drive the road. It's more likely 20 cars a week, if that. And they don't go speeding down the road, they creep down the road. In the 45 years that we've lived here, there's been no accidents. Our adjacent neighbors, the Lapkes, have told us they have no desire to close the road. The Bars, who live on Plaster House Road, have told us that they used to drive the road on a regular basis. Jim Kellogg in the Plaster House drove the road to work every day. Another neighbor is disappointed about the road closure, and she'll explain. The Rudens, who live in the Glass House, live on Long Island. Typically, they come up maybe 1 weekend a month, and we haven't seen them this year. Mr. Guerin, who lives on Hulls Hill and has no reason to use this portion of the road, wants to turn it into a walking trail. It already is a walking, hiking, jogging, bicycling trail for many. It's a multi-use road. Shutting it off to cars and carriages would serve no purpose and will deprive many people of the convenience and pleasure of the road. The road has always been posted, no trucks, no winter maintenance. These signs should stay there. Closing a town road is serious business. It could lead to costly lawsuits against the town, as has happened in the past. The barriers should be removed, the ruts repaired, and the road kept open as it has been for 100 years. Use common sense, stop making a mountain out of a molehill. Thanks.
Thank you. Public comment?
Dorothy Valley, Quaker Farms Road. In 1990, I bought property at 151 Quaker Farms Road. Why? Because I wanted to live by Jeremy Swamp Road Extension because it was all dirt and I had horses. And I like to drive a carriage and take elderly people up and down the road with my carriage. I also built a new place a quarter of a mile away, and I still do my horses and carriages. And just the other day when I was driving to the commission meeting, I realized I used that road to bring my farm equipment up to brush hog neighbors' big fields, and I don't like going down 188 and Hulls Hill Road where it could be unsafe for everyone. So I'm asking you to reconsider, to look into reopening this road and taking the barriers away. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good evening. John Guerin, 327 Hulls Hill. I find it interesting, all the people who want the road to remain open all have easy access within maybe 20 to 30 yards from their properties to a paved road. So I don't feel they're being deprived of access from their home. Second of all, I have permission to speak on behalf of the Rudens. They may not live here full-time, but I understand they pay their tax bill and are interested in seeing this made into a more of a public recreational road. And the third point I'll make is, based on what the town would have to pay to repair this road for 20 cars, I was willing to go, maybe there were 20 cars a day, but if it's 20 a month, that makes it even more of an argument for the town not spending this kind of money for 20 people to have a road for pure convenience when they're not deprived of public roads elsewhere. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, any other public comment?
Bruce Barr, 97 Plaster House Road. I just wanted to point out with respect to Jeremy Swamp Road that there's currently a big steel plate on Plaster House Road that's covering a sinkhole. If something were to happen to that and the road actually collapsed, then Jeremy Swamp Road would be a good secondary access to reach the area behind that area. So I think you want to consider that before you close the road. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Burr.
Any other public comment? Any other public comment? Any last-minute public comment? Okay, we'll close that portion of our meeting. Announcements and correspondence in front of you. Any questions on that? Reports are there.
With regards to the correspondence, I would just like to add to this list, if I may, I don't know, how do we do this? The letter that we all received via email yesterday
The letter,
from Mr. and Mrs. Short.
I can go over that in my selectmen's report.
Thank you.
If you could look through
Yep,
that.
absolutely.
Okay. Want to move on to the consent agenda. Do I have a motion?
I have to, I would ask that we remove the second item,
Which is-
referral from land use,
Okay,
for the reason,
okay.
not the request for town property, this referral from land use. The referral from land use I need to recuse myself from, so I need to remove it from the consent agenda.
Okay, we'll remove from the consent agenda. We'll take that separately. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It carries. It's separate. Okay, consent agenda.
Motion to approve.
I have the second.
Second.
Made and second. Any discussion on the consent agenda?
I just want to confirm, I talked to Dan earlier, we were emailed some job descriptions yesterday, and I think there was a slight revision, and... Right, no, very slight, I just,
Can we see that?
okay.
Okay. Any other discussion on that? Motion to approve?
So moved.
Second? Second. Any discussion, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It carries. Can we then pull out the referrals from land use? I think it was what we pulled out. That's what we pulled out, right? Yes. Okay, so resolved that the Southbury Board of Selectmen, upon the recommendation of the Inland Wetlands Commission, hereby releases the following soil erosion bonds of Adam Voss Brennick, Cooper Road, and Corbeau Associates, Britannia Road.
No, this isn't it.
This is not it.
No, no, it's with regard to Knapp property, I believe.
That was the purchasing of town
Oh,
property.
forgive me. Oh, okay.
So what do we do now, Jennifer?
I don't know. I just voted.
We're trying to help you out
I
there.
appreciate that greatly. No, right, well, what's this, right? That's what was number 4? Okay, well. The intention was there to recuse myself.
Why don't
It's
you just
not
make
like
a statement that,
Jennifer, would you like to make a statement?
to go into the minutes, that you accused yourself from that
I recused
portion.
myself for that portion.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so
I'd
at
like
least
to
I
make-
had that right.
You did. Indeed, you did.
I'd like to make a motion to pass the resolution concerning item F2, referral from land use.
Can I have a second?
I'll second it.
Seconded. Any discussion on this? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that carries. Bids and procurements, personal property audit. Pull it up.
Why did we go with the more expensive option? Is there a reason?
It's a letter from Mike Moriarty. Recently, the town solicited proposals for the personal property auditing services. 3 companies submitted proposals. I have examined the bids and recommend that you enter into a contract with Charles Feldman and Associates. This firm has been conducting audits for Southbury for more than 30 years. They have always exceeded the scope of the contract without imposing any additional fees more than that. However, any additional fees more than that. However, they have worked with our locally owned businesses to assist them through the process. That's his recommendation, right in the record. It's not substantially more. And obviously, the third one, based on 30 audits on the spreadsheet, would come out to 22.5.
Yeah, the third one was much
Third
higher.
one was too high.
I was just curious, so it sounds like Mike has better relations with these people, good experiences with them, and he has no experience with the other company, is that it?
Yeah, they've been doing it for,
A lot of history.
Well,
lot
I
of
guess for the
history.
$1,000.
They do a
we
good
could,
job.
Go with
And
the suggestion.
I could be wrong, but I seem to recall having a similar discussion
Last year.
the last time we approved personal property audits. The same thing, and we decided to go with Feldman.
can I have a motion?
I'll move it.
Second?
Second.
Made and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? And carries. On-call trade services? Let me see, okay.
I found that whole presentation confusing, but maybe it's just me. I'm not very smart, so.
Well, we have a spreadsheet. There's some, I talked to John about that. There's, some of this was not, nobody responded.
That wasn't clear, though. It's like, one of them had like color codes on it. What does that mean? Does that mean like we're using those people or not using them? And one was like, we always go to the
Second
low
lowest.
bidder, or why do they have the second highest or second lowest bidder highlighted? I mean, and then some of the others don't have these. I guess I just couldn't follow the logic of what was going on with it. I don't know. Is this like an older type document that's been around for like years and we just update the costs? Is that
No,
what it
this is,
This is new, the
This is
first
new.
time we've had this, okay.
right, this is new. And generally what we do when we do the online is similar to our equipment rental. We come
Okay.
up with the job, and then I think they do.
Yeah, so this is a new thing, this on-call trade services. It makes sense to have that, I guess.
It's a great idea.
Dan, were you involved with this?
Yeah, a little bit. What we're trying to do is make it readily available for John and Public Works. If we need something done in town hall, toilets or painting, that we don't have to go out and follow bidding policy for these small jobs, that we can get done fairly quickly.
Does he always go with a low bidder on a particular type of
I
work?
believe the reason to send it out was to get the lowest bidder, and if they're not available, then we'll go for the second one.
I also think they use it like if there's a little bigger job and they need two of the services, it'll depend on which two in the spreadsheet works out to be the lowest. That's generally, I mean, I don't know if we'll run into that often, but we do that with the equipment rental side. If you need this truck this size, this machine that size, you put those numbers together, and this is the contractor with that combination at the lower price. So, and sometimes it could be that they're lower on one thing, and that's the only thing you need, so.
Yeah, this was a result of the most recent amendment to the bid policy.
procurement.
And what we did was we mirrored the process that we used for the equipment rental for this. And that was I think we approved the RFP or whatever last meeting or 2 meetings ago.
So this is an effort to speed things along and not make it so cumbersome. All right, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move it.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed, and that carries. Minutes of June 20th, 2019, regular meeting.
Motion to approve.
Can I have a second?
Second.
Made and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed, and it carries. Unfinished business, charter revision. Let me pull that. So we're here, we can discuss some, we have time, we can discuss some of the charter revision proposed changes. We've heard some public comments on it.
Have we closed the public hearing on it? All right, the public hearing on the charter is now closed?
Yeah.
Okay. So now it is left up to us to review. So do we want to go through page by page?
We can do that. You want to do that, or you want to start with the summary? You think we could start, I was thinking, Yep. So, hang on, bear with me.
Sure.
We're at, okay. Yes, so today was the last day for the public hearing, and it's been closed. Last day is August 2nd, last day for Board of Selectmen to propose change to the CRC. So, summary of the changes. You want to go page by page, or would you like to take in general? We can start with here, the summary. Change of gender-specific titles and terms to gender-inclusive titles and terms. Board of Selectmen, Select Board, Selectmen to Select Person, Chairman to Chairperson, and he to he, she, they. You want to start with that? I think
That's fine.
we can get that out of the way. That's a pretty.
It's fine.
So, your thoughts?
My thoughts are I don't want any special, any special preferential treatment for being a woman. So I do like, I like more generic. I really like Board of Selectmen, personally. I like the tradition of it. I don't know about what my husband said about Board of Directors, but I do like Selectmen title. I also like Chair, and I don't need Chairman. I think Chair is just sufficient, and, corporate America, Chair suffices and acceptable.
I kind of like the, I think that, not me personally, but chair of the Board of Selectmen or First Selectman, I don't know. Chair is kind of neutral, so that wouldn't be a bad change.
I don't think so. But I would go to Chair as opposed to Chairman or Chairperson. I would just say Chair.
I like that. Justin?
I'm 100% behind the intent, which is to make these terms more neutral. I'm all for tradition, but I think I agree 100% that Chair, just make it Chair, make it simpler. The one that I think is, I agree with some of tonight's commentary, Select Board is clunky. It doesn't roll off the tongue, and I think we could find another word that would go there that would do the job if we thought about it a little bit. But again, I am behind the intent.
I would say, if I may speak on behalf, I think the whole board is, yes, behind the intent. We recognize that. I think that's, none of us here would feel any different. Jason, do you have any suggestions on this?
I mean, I'd agree that we're supportive of the intent, but the implementation of the intent is sort of the difficult part. Like, what do you call it? So, as to the proposals being proposed, I mean, replacing he with he, she, they, that makes sense. Chairman with chair instead of chairperson, I'm on board with. Like what others have said, I personally don't like the name Select Board. I mean, if there was some other, I don't have a great idea for that. If there was some other name to consider, but I agree with Justin and others that have spoken on that.
George, do you have any input on this?
I mean, I'm kind of a traditional old white guy, and I guess to me, I probably wouldn't change anything, but I get the sense that there are a lot of folks that want to make the change, and I respect that. I'm a little troubled by he, she, they, just because it's so awkward. I mean, I type a lot of stuff. I type that with all the slashes, and it's awkward, but I'll go with whatever folks feel comfortable with. I'm not gonna drive this any direction. Whatever makes people happy on the board, I'll go with.
So it was suggested, someone suggested to me that statement in the beginning that the intent of the words is to make a statement that's gender neutral. That this we want to make that statement that that's not the intent. So maybe that would be a good solution. If we go to a chair of the board, instead of the first selectman chair, if that's,
I think what they do in the chart, it's intermittent, right? So it refers to chairs of various boards and commissions as opposed to the first selectman role. So I like the first selectman. I think if we stay with selectmen, we need to be first something.
those of us on this side of the gender aisle are trying to be very.
Please don't. I've never asked for any special treatment. I mean, I'm happy to be a selectman. I love being a selectman.
Jeff,
So,
I'm sorry, go ahead, Jennifer.
yeah, thanks. It really, I get the intent, and I hear, where's that, did he leave? But I really like Board of Selectmen, to be honest. So, I like chairman, I like chair for chairman because it's just concise. He/she is fine. I don't know about the they. I'm your boy or woman.
Oh, man, you're putting a lot of pressure on us.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
I have a problem with chair because you can be chair of the Board of Finance, chair of the Board of Selectmen, or, or this board if you're not calling it selectmen anymore. But you can't just say chair because it's not specific enough. So you have to add extra words to it to clarify which chair you're talking about, right? Or wrong?
It's not that you're wrong. It's just in the charter itself, it references chair. It refers back to chair in a certain section. So it's already a given as to what.
So that when you say chair, you're always referring to the chair of this board here and not the chair of the Board of Finance or the chair of the Conservation Group? Or?
No, because in the charter, the way it's broken down, it refers to specific sections. So if you're referring to a chair, you're referring to the chair of that specific category, is all I'm saying.
Right.
You don't have to say chair,
Yeah, but if who knows what category
instance.
you're referring to if I'm just writing something in general, and I'm assuming this change would occur not just in the charter language, but across the board in everything we do.
George, I don't think.
Am I misunderstanding something?
The change of chairman to chairperson or chair, as we've been discussing, is not, it's not specific to this board. It's
Right.
just generally throughout the
Okay,
charter.
so whenever you're using
Because-
chairman, you change it to
So
chair.
currently, the charter
All right.
says the word chairman in multiple sections.
Then I'm okay with that.
Just want to change it to chair, that's all. That's what
So I think we finally,
I don't really know what we decided on that one.
I think is there a consensus on there that the wording of chairman becomes chair? Is that?
It's not referenced all that many times, so it's not really that much of ink saved, but.
Okay.
Jeff, what's the calendar like as far as these, do we have to make final determinations on these tonight?
August 2nd,
No,
I think you
next
just said.
meeting.
August 2nd is the last day to propose changes.
So we have time.
So we do have,
I think we should talk it through tonight, and I think we should, some of this feedback came to us tonight, I think we should certainly go through this exercise, but make our final votes at our next meeting.
That's fine.
Would be my
We'll also all be there then,
Yeah, we
so
won't-
I think
That too,
that
but it'll give us
makes
a
more
chance
sense.
to marinate on some of these things a little
Yeah.
bit, and maybe come up with
Different ideas.
something better than select board.
I think we also need to respond to two of the comments tonight about why certain things are requested to be changed, like the grant section. We all know a little bit more of the genesis of that, right? So
Yeah.
maybe we can
No, we should still
share
work
that with
through
her.
it all, just.
Okay, okay.
Do we want to identify issues tonight that we're gonna, if we're good with changes, then we can sort of cross those off
Check 'em out.
the list. And if there's things we want further discussion on that we may want to make recommendations back to them, sort of, if we could get a going list, and then that's what we'll work off of at the next meeting.
okay. So if I may, I'd like to, things move slowly, okay? Could we go back to that? So, just for clarification, we're kind of looking at, we don't have a problem with going from he to he, she, or they. It's
I have a problem with it because I type a lot of stuff, and if I have to start typing that, I'm going to complain. I'm not going to do it, I mean, I just won't.
What about just the S in parentheses before the he?
At the what?
S in parentheses before the he. It's just,
Oh, I see what
Because
you're
if it's
saying. I
applicable-
gotcha.
If it's applicable to be a
Like-
she, it's a she, and if it's not, then you exclude it. How about
That's
that?
easier, still you have to type parentheses.
You do, but it's less typing.
I'm not as fast a typist as you, obviously. You know,
Just
I
trying to
kinda-
work with everybody.
We're trying to get there, aren't we?
This is how this sausage is made.
So let's just, if we could in the back, kind of keep track of this. So there's a S in parentheses before the he. And the question of leave it he, she, they. Sorry, George, I have a daughter who's very understanding of this, and they're going to a art college. And I understand the sensitivity of the they. I really do. I truly do.
I don't even know what that means exactly. Could somebody explain it to the old white guy here who doesn't know these things?
Well,
Because I don't know what it means. When you say they, I'm thinking, well, that's more than one person.
There's a lot of people who are either transgender or transsexual or different, identified.
Yeah, I
different.
get that, but why are they called they? Because they're more than one.
Because it's gender neutral, and there are some who feel gender neutral. So I do understand that.
Yeah. I don't.
I exposed to it, and I frankly am sensitive to it. So I don't have a problem with that, and I don't have a problem with the S, he. I think we can get through it. So, chair instead of chairman or chairperson, I think we can talk, all right. We don't seem to have a real problem with selectmen. I would refer to
Sorry,
our
ladies, if I'm
select
letting any
person.
of you down.
You don't let people down. And Board of Selectmen seems to, we're pretty good with leaving it at that as.
And first
Well, we're
selectman.
gonna think, potentially come up with other ideas for that.
And we could come up with other ideas.
And Mike's gonna have his input when he comes, so.
Okay, all right. Changing the term of the first selectman and Board of Selectmen from 2 years to 4 years in the first election after the adoption of the charter. To me, this gets a little complicated. I know there, what I feel was there was concern, I think this was when when there was a whole new board walked in the door. I'd say that most of us walked in the door maybe new to the Board of Selectmen, but I don't think all of us were new to government. And, I came from Wetlands, Justin came from the Board of Finance, you had been Assistant First Selectman. Charter revision, so, and Jason has municipal experience in government and quite aware. And I don't think that any of us, there was, no disrespect to Mike or to George, what I would say, not having been there, we all listened to each other, and I think we performed pretty well. I also think the historical knowledge of very stable commissions and committees that we have, along with the staff that we have. I know I found them all helpful, making sure that the I's were dotted and the T's were crossed, and they're the backbone of that, of a lot of this operation. And I think the complexity, personally, I think the complexity of trying to implement this and getting rotating terms, I'm not sure it will work out with, if someone else was, Jennifer, cared to run and you were in a different term, it could cause more turmoil than.
I hear what you're saying.
You see what I'm saying? That's just my input. We've heard from some people, this is the 2 years to 4 year terms. Personally, for me, at first, I thought the 4 year term, I was, thinking that would be good. But on the other hand, when you take the job as first selectman, there is a lot of pressure on this office. There's no question. And I'm not, but there's no question there's a lot of pressure on whoever sits in the office. And committing, if you expect someone to come into this office and commit, 4 years can be a lot longer, a term. Maybe things happen in 4 years, you want to go off to do. And I also believe that the people can decide they want to change. I don't think there's that often that a first selectman does not get a second term. I think that's a little unusual. Generally, there is a second term. And I've heard from many people myself that have said they'd prefer, the public would prefer to have a choice. And I think we've tried, Jason, we've tried this. It was in a charter before, and it was voted down.
Which part are you on? The 2-year
2 to 4
terms?
The two-year to 4 year.
Yeah, so on the, it didn't get to the public last time. When I was on the Charter Revision Commission in 13, 14, one of the topics was, this comes up, I think, every Charter Revision Commission. This was one of the topics, and what we did was we came up with a list of, pros and cons, and we had an extremely nonpartisan vote. There were Republicans and Democrats on both sides in the yes and no vote, and I fell on the side of keeping the 2-year terms. And to me, and a number of the people that voted to keep 2-year terms, the most important element on that chart was the accountability element, and we heard about some of that tonight. And at the last meeting, and we heard the Charter Revision Commission back then heard the same comments that you should have to go face the voters. Go face the voters every 2 years. If they don't, if you're doing a good job and people like you, you get reelected. And for me, that was one of the most important criteria, and accountability remains one of the most important criteria for me. And I agree with what Scott said. It's okay if the board is all new. It's rare. I mean, we were all new. I mean, if we went back in Southbury history, it would probably be really hard to find another instance where it was all brand new. Like, it's probably a very rare occurrence. So it is okay. It worked out okay. We have a institutional knowledge in the building. We have department heads. We have volunteers. The town. It's not. We're not the only 6 people in town. So for me, I prefer the 2-year terms, and I'm not hearing, and this also weighed on me last time too. I'm not hearing from the public any sort of outpouring that they want any more than 2-year terms from sort of both sides of the aisle. Like, I'd be interested in hearing, the more of the I understand the rationale that, okay, so you're not running all the time, and maybe you could get more done or whatever, but I don't know that weighs heavier than, the accountability element. So I think what we've heard is pretty much all the comments we've heard have been for 2-year terms, and 2-year terms make sense to me, and that's what we voted last time. So last time it wasn't part of the proposal. It actually never got to the Board of Selectmen because the Charter Revision Commission never proposed it.
Can I ask how you feel about the
next one?
Yeah,
So that change I agree with. That's to separate the first selectman and Board of Selectmen. Is that the one?
No, this is the alternating of the terms.
If it's a 2-year term, then
That's a moot point, yeah.
Right, we're not. That's. Okay.
I mean, someone made an interesting point tonight that I actually had not thought of before. Usually, what you hear is, give the, some towns have, like, the first selectman has a 4-year term and everyone else has 2. Someone said tonight, why not give the volunteers a benefit of the 4-year term? Which is kind of an interesting concept because our Board of Finance is 4 years, our Board of Ed is pretty much all our boards are 4 years. This one is unique because the first selectman is part of the board. I hadn't really thought about that concept before, but I still think that the 2 years probably makes sense.
Justin, you have?
I agree a lot with what Jason just said. My natural inclination actually was for the longer term. And it has nothing to do with the fact that we all got here as new faces. I think that was a one-off that's not likely to be repeated. But I think particularly for the first selectman, you're basically gonna be campaigning again 18 months after you are seated, which isn't necessarily the best way for somebody in that position to get things done, in my estimation. That said, I haven't heard anybody, well, I've heard one voice say that select people should perhaps serve for 4 terms. You know, coming into these public forums, I thought, you know, maybe there would be some people that were for the 4-year and there'd be some against, and maybe we could meet in the middle and have 3-year terms. But I just don't hear anybody calling for it. So, I know in my time on finance on this board, there's been people that I've served with who've lamented the fact that we don't often hear from the town. But I think when we do hear from the townspeople, we should listen. So, I am not in favor of the longer term at this point.
George?
I've stated before that I was in favor of 4 years, more for self-interest, because I know how hard it is to campaign every 2 years, and I think we all go through that. But I have not heard anyone in favor of 4 years that I've talked to. I know Mike, the other meeting, said he had, but I have not heard anyone. So I'll keep it short and simple and just say, stay with it 2 years and be done with it.
Okay. And no alternating, okay. What's next on there? So this is the separated election of the first selectman, board of selectmen?
So that one did go to a vote, whatever it was, 5 years ago. That's something I am, personally, I am in favor of it. The Charter Revision Commission last time approved separating those races. I feel like if you're running for an office, you pick the office you're running for, and that's the office you should be elected to. What happened last time was, the Charter Revision Commission did propose it. You know, we proposed it, the Board of Selectmen allowed it, it went to referendum as a separate question, and the public actually voted it down. But for the same reasons I was in favor of it last time, I would be in favor of it again, and I would also, again, include it as a separate question to allow people the opportunity on that. As a procedural matter on this topic, I circulated an email this morning that I'm not sure if everyone had an opportunity to look at. I was asked to reach out to Jeff Tinley after the last meeting because I believe that to effectuate the intent of the Charter Revision Commission on this topic, it's not enough to just remove the language. We actually have to add language to the charter. And Jeff Tinley did respond agreeing with that, and he provided some thoughts on what that language might be. I was thinking perhaps he can just rewrite that section for us for the next meeting so that we can vote to recommend that language back to the Charter Commission if the majority of this board wants to separate these races. Because in order to actually separate them, we need to add language.
Justin?
I feel that the races should be separated. There should not be a consolation prize. Folks may recall that way back when our nation was young, the loser of the presidency served as vice president. And that went so well that our founders did away with that. And I would ask anybody, particularly you, Jeff, to imagine what your last 3.5 years would be like if Ed Edelson had been sitting there every Thursday night. So I'm in strong favor of splitting that off. And we should ask the town people for their opinion. We should make it a question.
George?
Does anyone know why the people voted that down in the last charter?
So to my surprise, and we heard it tonight, and I was surprised last time too, people actually come and speak against that provision. You know, Ed Platt and Harmon, Ed and I have discussed this, provision. You know, they both spoke tonight against it. People have differing viewpoints. So I think when you have that, especially when we have a situation where it voted down once before, we should give the public an opportunity to make that independent determination. rather than us just shoving it into the rest of the charter.
So it sounds,
I concur.
a
Thank you.
separate. And I agree, and yes, it would be depending on who the second person was and how the race was, it could, it worked in one instance, would it work in another? It can or can't, it could be really detrimental, it could really hold back what the board can do. And I think it could, if the person was to take it, it depends on the personality, whether the person wanted to be constructive and who was put on the regular board, lost second. And I would also say that, the new, whoever the first selectman is in the race needs to be able to do what they need to do, or prove themselves without that. I mean,
Consolation prize, more or less.
Right.
And it's disingenuous to the members who are actually running for the selectmen's lot. It's not fair to them. They run a whole campaign and, oh, I'm sorry, I got more votes than you, you're out. That doesn't seem fair.
So I understand that what you're saying, but I would say, aside from that, the people and what kind of work's gonna get done. I hear what you're saying. I don't wanna say, if you do run and you do get bumped, it's part of the process, go again, and I get that. But more importantly is, the person that people elected have asked that person to do a job. And if the person who gets if we can't say the consolation prize, becomes intentionally disruptive, not giving that person a chance to exercise and do the job and get what the people elected hopefully will get done, I think that would be a problem. So I agree, I think it should be a separate item. Are we keeping notes on this? Separate item for consideration on the ballot.
I'll play devil's advocate here. We've had this happen twice in my experience in town, once with John Monteleone, who took the opportunity to serve, and the second time with Ed Edelson, who decided not to take that opportunity and left the seat to Mike. I don't have a problem with either one of those situations, and I'm not sure that we've had an issue with, the loser of the first selectman coming in and causing a disruption. Maybe it's happened in the distant past, I don't know. I mean, I hear what you're saying, Justin. I mean, it could be a problem, but has it been a problem? And I think in some cases, the person that loses is maybe very well qualified and knowledgeable, and we know how hard it is to find good people to serve on these boards. So you may be excluding someone who has good qualifications and skills and a real interest in serving by doing it, by excluding them from the board. So I don't know, I'm kind of on the fence on this one. I'm almost thinking that we should leave it as is, and I'm very curious as to why the citizens decided to vote against it when it was proposed before. I mean, I'm just wondering, well, anyway, that's what I got to say.
I also think you could end up with different situations. So the John Monteleone situation, John wasn't a first selectman before, right? So he was running and then he served on the board. It's a very different situation if the sitting first selectman loses the race and is now going to serve on the board, because now this is someone who has been in complete control of the town and then now serves on the board, and you can see where that can lead to some trouble. And I spoke to Ed shortly after that election. He felt it wouldn't be really fair for him to be sitting here second guessing you, looking over your back. And I thought he made the right choice and the best choice for the town in that moment. From a charter perspective, we can't dictate what scenarios are going to arise, so we need to sort of make the best decision that's going to apply to everything. And I think when you commit yourself to a race, that you're running for a particular race, that should be the only race that you have run for. That you're bumping someone else off the board who worked hard and ran for a seat they really wanted, and now you get the seat when you didn't even run for it. And I think there's a fairness factor there as well. So I support separating them.
Okay, so I think we could safely say that would probably be left for to be on the, voted on by the people.
Separated out in the ballot.
Separated out.
So can we ask Jeff to put together, because the email he had sent,
Yep.
you'll see it's sort of, he has a comment on the first section, the second section, if he could just like draft whatever language. I'm going to be away starting tomorrow, so if he could do that so he gives us language for the next meeting. Because we're going to have to vote to send that back to the Charter Revision Commission.
So Jeff, we'll have Jeff Tinley draft the language for the separation of that part of the charter. Okay. All right. Temporary absence of the first selectman. That's on 303. Section 303. Oop. So I think what the change here is from by majority vote of the entire membership, what you're saying is to automatically go to the pro tem. Basically, that's what my understanding of that. And is there any input on that? Justin, you look like you were about to.
No, I don't have a strong feeling. I mean, it's, you know, what else might they vote to do?
Pull somebody out from the public. Yeah.
Well, no,
It's possible.
but at this point, I think,
You're taking away sort of a pro forma vote, in my opinion, something that would always happen.
I think in the absence of the temporary absence of, or temporary disability of the first selectman of fewer than 60 days. So this would be if the first selectman were to have a medical issue or something, which generally I think that's what we'd be talking about, for less than 60 days.
But what about a pro tem who has another job? Right? So, for instance, with us.
I never thought of that.
For instance, with us, if something
Yeah.
happened to you and I had to step up, I would have to take a 2-month period off from my job, and I might not have a job.
No, yeah, you're right.
So we might need to, I don't.
No,
That's true of anybody who's going to be serving.
Exactly,
Well,
we're gonna have a full-time job.
It's rare to, you know.
I mean,
I don't know that
in
it's,
this instance,
Maybe.
if I was to be, we would probably vote, we would probably vote that who,
maybe somebody else on the board
George
actually could do
is
it.
somewhat retired, maybe,
Just a thought.
you know.
But I like leaving it with the majority of the entire membership.
I do too. I think that's a concern. I never thought of that.
Good.
Or you can, or you can keep the change, right? So you make it automatic so that if there's someone immediately who's in that position, but then you add, if that
Unless-
person's unable to
Right.
carry out those duties, then the board, put the rest of the language back in. Then the Board of Selectmen acts in
So
place
if
and
the,
cannot
if,
pick
if
someone else.
if the pro tem should,
Right.
Be unable to fulfill the
able to, then it
responsibilities.
would be by the vote of the Board of, majority vote of the Board of Selectmen. That makes sense because
Keep it and add it. Mhm.
I think that makes sense to me. Justin?
It makes sense.
You know, we don't, you know, yeah, we don't, because you wouldn't be able to do anything different. Final.
Right, if you limit it just to the pro tem, you're stuck.
Right. Right. And on a temporary basis or a short period, you may be able to cover, a pro tem may be able to cover some of the day-to-day till things adjust. Okay. So we understand what we're going to do with that. Okay. What do we have next? I don't,
304.
304 is a procedural, it's an update of our world, I think.
Is there a new resolution out at the state level to go away from publicizing notices? Can we just do them on the town websites now? Should that?
There has been,
It's thrown up there, right? It did not pass? Okay.
They're always talking about it.
Still always talking about
Would
it.
be
Okay.
nice, but-
Okay, okay. It would just save us some money, right? It would save us from having to publicize in the notices and the bulletins. Okay, whatever. So, no,
what are you saying?
nothing. We can't change it. It's not voted yet.
We can't change it because,
No, we can do that. I was adding something to it with the notices the legal notices that we put in.
Right.
We pay for those. So I
Right,
was thinking if
right.
we could avoid paying for them and also make that a condition of with the agendas, that would be great, but we can't, because
Okay.
it's not law yet.
so,
That's
so
good.
this change on section 304, I was trying to keep up there and I
Sorry.
fell behind just a little bit. Where's the, cause, shall establishing cause to be posted on, what's that? We already do this. So do we want to put this in the charter or just leave it?
I'm fine with it being in here, that's fine.
Well, I mean, we do it so we
It's
can leave it in
procedural.
there. So it's
Procedural.
procedural. Okay, we're good.
That's fine.
We're all right with that. Same thing with the ordinances. Good.
Do we need, I hate to be, so the bulletin board, we're talking about that board, what, in the town clerk's office? Okay.
All right?
The neon one we're gonna get and put on Main Street.
Please. The press is here, right? You got that?
It's be a headline in tomorrow's paper. Neon signs.
Neon signs the
Our
board
town
voted
hall.
on. We'll all be fired. Okay. Where are we next? Duties. An annual state of the town report to the electors. Any feeling on that?
I think it's important. I think we should.
Okay. Justin?
I
Hate
think
to
it's-
call everybody out, but
No, it's
What
good.
about-
I think it's a good idea.
good,
Yep.
good. Okay.
Doesn't have to be voluminous, but there should be.
It doesn't have to be in neon, right?
No,
Can we put a time limit on in the charter?
Page numbers, yeah.
George?
You talking about the annual state of the
Yeah.
town?
Yeah.
What would you talk about? I mean, the roads, I mean, how many roads? I mean, there's so many things you could talk about, I don't even know where to start.
I think I think it would, I think
So vague.
a general state of the town. I mean, let's face it, you're first selectman. You're not gonna come out with a statement that says, oh my gosh, we're in terrible trouble, we're not doing the roads good.
Yeah.
I mean, you're gonna write the report that
You're just gonna tell people
sets you
what
up
was
for your next
accomplished.
election.
What things were accomplished.
Yeah.
What your accomplishments were. You could do it by department, like the town guide does something like that, right? Doesn't Voices do that, Justin? You do something like that. Yep.
Town guy.
Yeah.
You could
Jason,
talk
you have-
about accomplishments and goals for the next year, perhaps.
I don't know about goals, but it's an annual report. An annual report reports on the previous year, right?
I think more information is always better. I think it makes sense, and each first selectman is gonna make it their own, and it's gonna be done differently. And, you know, the charter can't, you know, guide every little detail, but I think it makes sense.
And I think it would be up to the first selectman to, yeah, correct, to come up with the type of report he, she, or they would like.
Can it be in
It doesn't-
PowerPoint?
See what you did there, Jeffrey. See
How
what
was
you
that?
did there. Yeah,
huh?
it was very smooth.
That was slick.
George didn't have to type it.
I'm okay. I think that's good. I don't have a problem with that. So I don't have a problem. Allow first selectman to delegate duties to members of the board of selectmen.
What's the
We
genesis
delegate
of that?
duties now.
Right, what's the origin of that?
301.
Let's see what the language says.
301, section,
I don't think that's,
where are we, are we missing something?
I don't think it's 301.
Why is that?
'Cause this is,
Wait a minute. Let's go back. Chapter 4, first selectman duties. 301C.
it's 9C, so 3.
There we go. Are we at the right one? Delegation of duties.
Oh, it's
first-
402 is what we're looking at.
402.
That's just a typo in the cheat sheet.
Okay.
There we
You're
go.
human, whoever.
We don't allow for being
Comprehensive
human.
town report.
Okay, 402. I'll cross that. Okay. Delegation of duties, the first select person may delegate any of the foregoing duties to a town employee or board of selectmen, subject to limitations by charter. How do you feel about that? I think I'd want to know, do we know what the intent of that was? Is there anybody from the charter? Could we call them up?
I think Ed
what
was
that-
here earlier, but.
Ed was in the back row, but he's not there. John, any idea?
Can you come up and Shauna, please, just kind of, I think, clarify what the, what that intent was?
Could you just repeat the question one more time so we can?
So in the delegation of duties, it says the first select person may delegate any of the foregoing duties to a town employee, that's what it says now, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we want to add, they want to add or select board member. So one of the board, selectmen from the board of selectmen.
I think it was to clarify, you have a lot of liaisons. We had no way of actually stating that they're liaisons to particular positions, task force, and so forth. So the original charter said the foregoing duties to a town employee, but it didn't give you the leeway to do what you're doing now as far as having, you know, a liaison to different task force and so forth. Yeah, it just is tightening
clarifies
up
it.
the language, right?
Okay,
Okay?
thank you.
Good.
Okay, and just for, oops, sorry. And subject to the limitations. Okay, Justin,
Assuming the select board member could refuse those duties if they didn't want to. Makes fine sense to me that you would want to hand it off to somebody
Right.
that's keyed in on what's been talked about over the last months and years. So, yeah, it makes sense.
all right. Everybody else good with that? Okay. Wow, that's pretty good. All right, what do we have next? Standardized appointments, two by maid Okay.
B.
We're on section, chapter 5, section 507, standardized appointments to be made, I would say, to be made by the entire Board of Selectmen? Would that be 507? So let's pull that up quick. 507. Section 507.
So to answer Scott Furr's question, because he had a question about this.
Who did?
Scott, I think.
Oh, Scott Furr.
Yeah. The question related to number 9, why it changed from consultation to approval of majority. And my guess is, and someone on the Charter Commission can confirm, is they've standardized that throughout the entire charter. All appointments under this new charter require a vote of the Board of Selectmen. So there were about 3 or 4 that didn't.
Mm-hmm.
This one, Animal Control Officer, Emergency Management Director, and there may have been another one. And this charter sort of clarifies that it should be approved by the board.
Any,
I'm good with that change.
you're good with that change?
I am.
Justin?
I'm okay with that change too.
George?
Could someone explain to me exactly what it means? So now, any appointment has to be approved by the board? Is that what we're saying here? I'm not sure I understand what it is we're changing.
There are some positions that are appointments by the first selectman in the current charter.
How many?
I think there's 3. It'll be in the charter here. What's that?
Conservation Commission, Animal Control, Emergency Management.
Emergency Management Director
Fire Marshal,
and the Fire Marshal?
Tree Warden.
There's quite a few then that you have the authority to appoint, and now we're saying the whole board needs to approve that?
Right.
Yeah, well, I guess I'd be okay with that.
I
Is there a
don't-
reason not to be okay with it? I mean, is there
No,
some
we
reason
have-
why you need to be able to?
No, we can,
We can do that?
no, I mean, tree warden is for a 2-year term.
Does it slow things down if all this stuff has to go through the board? I mean, is it?
No,
make
I
it
don't think
more
there's
awkward?
any in there that would,
Another line on the consent agenda, right?
just another line on the consent
Yeah.
agenda.
Just be
Yeah,
aware
I
of it.
mean, we currently do all appointments, like all boards and commissions, and, we do
Yeah.
tons of appointments every meeting. Really, this charter change affects like 4 things that slipped through the cracks over the years that weren't included as part of the Board of Selectmen's appointments.
I'm okay with it.
I don't have a problem with it, so that change is good. What are we on next? We got, added positions of Economic Development Director and Human Resources Officer. On 507.
Well, we don't have a human resources officer. We're not planning to hire one. Is that correct?
Well, we're currently using a firm
Right,
to
but
do
it's
it.
it's not an officer that's on staff, so it's a
What
whole
about
different-
function? Sorry.
About what?
What about calling it function instead of officer? Human resources, function.
Could do that.
Yeah, I think that's,
The
yeah.
intent, I mean,
I think, I think it's been well established that we, I don't see us ever going backwards on a human resource function in the town that's defined. I don't think, I think that's a human, I would say 19, a human resource.
You can change the word officer to whatever makes the best sense. I mean, the reality is certainly 8 years ago when I started with the Board of Finance, they were advocating for these two positions then. So the fact that we finally got them, I think it should be codified here with the idea that this isn't forever, folks. Somebody's gonna do this again in 5 years, and they can pull them out if needs be.
That's true.
But I think for now, we've agreed that these are things that we need in the 21st century, and they should be reflected in the charter.
Jason?
I agree with that. And there's also a provision in the charter that allows us to, eliminate things, discontinue things or whatever. So if something changes, if the town decides not, I don't know why we would decide, not to have a human resource function, like we should never decide to do that. But if we did.
Regionalization could be something.
Right.
Right.
That could change that, both of those positions.
So we could agree not to, we don't have to fill it.
Yeah, that's
so-
true, because, right.
We know the state's gonna continue to pressure us to regionalize, and we may or may not find things we wanna do.
And it may be combined. I
That's
mean,
one way it could be.
if we're using a term now, if a COG was to create an HR group for the COG members, we could still do that. I don't want to handcuff us, because I don't think we may or may not see this in 5 years, but it could happen. It could happen in 5 years. And the same thing, economic development director, there is always the idea at COG is a collaborative economic development for the COG, which I think we still do to some point. But I just don't want to see us get handcuffed, so we could still do that. So I'm good with these. Human resource, do we do officer or a function, or?
I think a different word makes sense. Function might be the word.
So let's think about, I think we're okay with the economic development director. Let's see if we can plug in.
If we're gonna, not to get too technical, but I think it makes sense for the reasons Justin said, to have the human resource in here, because it is something that's been talked about for many, many years. So we're more likely to keep it going if it's in the charter, but I'm not sure it belongs in section 507 of the charter. Because 507 is officers and officials. You're talking about a person. You're talking about a director of something, or, things like that, as opposed to a function. We have a consultant, a company that we've hired. So maybe we put a line elsewhere to deal with that.
Elsewhere in the.
I'm not sure where, but.
You'd have to create like a new section, I think. I don't think there's any.
Oh, my gosh.
I hadn't
Well,
thought
it
about that
doesn't
until
fit
this
into any
moment,
other
so I didn't
section.
really look for that.
I don't know.
So I
I'm
think.
gonna think about it. We will think about it for the next
Let's
meeting.
think
but
about
it's
that.
like-
So let's think about that. Okay.
I don't know. I mean, if you look at section 507, all the appointed officers and officials, it's pretty much mostly the department heads. And these two are relatively new departments. I don't know that it doesn't, I think I'm okay with leaving it there, but we can talk about it later.
Could you say that again, Jason, why you think it might belong someplace else other than this?
I wanted to look to see if there was another place that it fit, because this is,
Sorry, I didn't see
it's
it.
not a person. It's not an officer.
I see what you're saying.
It's not a,
Yep.
the director of public works, or the tree warden, or the assessor, or whatever. Those are, town officers and officials. The human resource function is, we have a contract with a consulting group that's assisting us and giving us advice on human resource. It's just different.
You're right. Yeah, I see what you're saying.
Huh.
Okay, because it's not we're talking about the human resource function, not a particular department head or director. Okay, so let's, well, bear with me, let me take that note down.
That's tricky, I guess so.
Planning boards, okay. All right,
But you'd leave EDC there, right?
yeah. Yeah, because that's a,
Person.
and we can, if there's something came up, we can change, okay. Where are we next? That is Ethics Commission. Any regular member at a meeting. I don't have a problem with that. Anybody else have okay with that?
They don't now?
Evidently not.
No, the issue came up a couple months ago.
Oh, well, that makes sense to put it in, then, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it could have been, I don't know, an issue, but sometimes the technicality of filling it. And it is for, at a meeting. It's not, you're not filling it, right, okay.
From the
What it-
general public.
What it currently says is an alternate can only fill the unaffiliated position. So the Ethics Commission has 3 members, a Democrat, a Republican, and an unaffiliated.
Right.
So if the Republican doesn't show up, they can't fill the position because the charter says only.
Only for the unaffiliated.
It
Got
just
it.
doesn't make any sense, and no other board works like that.
Right,
And we assume our ethics board is
yeah.
ethical. Okay. New section added, Strategic Plan Commission. They are to serve an advisory-only capacity to other boards and commissions on the implementation of a strategic plan.
I'll just comment on I think it was Ed Platt who made the comment. If you read, I think he was concerned about the last clause of the section because he thought it gave them too much authority. That last clause is qualified by the word advising in the beginning. So you all remember when we went through this, making this language to create this commission, we bent over backwards to make sure that this was just an advisory commission, because we received comments. This is not supposed to replace or oversee the planning commission, the zoning commission, or anyone else. It's not supposed to supersede any other bodies in town. It's not supposed to tell them what to do. It's an advisory commission that advises the Board of Selectmen. And you know, if there's better language, we could think about it, but I think that's what the current language does.
So I think I see the qualification, the Strategic Plan Commission shall serve in an advisory-only capacity, advising the Board of Selectmen and such other commissions, departments, offices as the Board of Selectmen may require. I think,
They're simply a resource.
it's a resource,
They're just
yeah.
a resource.
It's just a resource.
It's not telling the planning commission, oh, you gotta take this out of the POCD.
Right.
Gosh, no.
It's, hey, planning commission, these are the priorities, you know, here's some thoughts that you may consider in developing the POCD. They could say that, but it's up to the planning commission what's in the POCD.
Right. That's the way I see I understand the concern, but I think it's addressed there. George, you read that?
Well, I see the word advisory capacity and only, you know, it's pretty clearly written, I think. And I agree that it's an advisory board and really doesn't have any power to compel anyone to do anything in town. But how it's worded, I guess it's okay the way it's written.
I mean, this board may have some times when we are asking them to work with a commission and give them input of the strategic plan.
I see
seems
the
pretty
value of
clear.
it being in here since we never had a strategic plan before. It makes sense to put it in there.
Well, I think it strengthens up the advisory and the asking, if we're asking if a planning department or a park and rec is dealing with something, and we need, ask them to go work with them and how it fits into the strategic plan. That's what we do. I think they would do that anyway.
Right.
They'd be happy to do that.
The Charter Revision Commission didn't draft this language. This is,
What we
our
resolved.
board
Yeah.
created this commission with a resolution that included this language. What the Charter Revision Commission did said we should put it in the charter with all the other commissions. So that's the language approved, that we've already approved.
So do we need it in the, is there a reason? I mean, the only reason I say is, is it okay the way it sets now, or is there a need to have it in the charter? Is it something, if we have it now and add it to the charter, is it going to,
Well, are we gonna get rid of the strategic plan? Because if we're not, then we should, I think, keep it in here since it's a new plan.
well, I don't think we ever,
Just
we
right.
definitely, I don't see any reason
So
we want to
then we
get
should
rid
keep it.
get rid of, I'm not saying that, I'm just questioning, I just want to make sure we're not making things bigger and bigger just because they're bigger if it's working okay. I just want to get the thought about that. But doesn't seem to,
I mean, what I'm thinking is, this plan has been due for almost 2 decades, right? It's supposed to be done a long time ago. So obviously, the reticence to do it has some roots in politics, I would think. And perhaps the future of the plan is gonna, in some portion, rely on having a commission to nudge us every once in a while to say, don't forget about this. Considering how long it took to get to something that we were mandated by the charter to have, I think it makes sense to put this language in there and make sure that we do what we're supposed to do. Because the 6 of us ain't gonna sit here forever. I'm not.
well, yeah, I mean, it's,
But I think it makes sense because, look right above it, the Ethics Commission's here. Other committees and commissions and their duties are laid out here. So I think whether it's appropriate to be there or not, it is appropriate. And I have a lot of respect for Mr. Platt, and I think his concern mainly is with the wording in the last language, not the last sentence. Not to put words in his mouth, but that's what it sounded like to me. But I'm comfortable with that language because the word device is in there twice.
I think Ed was concerned that the last clause was giving this commission more power than.
To go around us.
Right.
In a way, it sounded like.
Right.
But I don't see that.
and I have to agree. I mean, we had a public comment by one gentleman who's on the strategic plan here. It's true. You don't want, I think for the work that has been done by those people, and now the people who are trying to, they have some energy, and we're going to get there. I don't think anybody, frankly, is trying to hold this back. But if it's in the charter, it's up front, and we see it, and people can ask questions about it, and someone else comes in, and you can't forget that there is a strategic plan. So I think, I think you're right. So I think we're leaving it in is good.
We created them. They already
Yeah.
exist. They're doing the work. I mean,
Yeah, no, it keeps it up front and
you
then
go.
where it's supposed to be. Okay. What's the next one? Wow. Removal of members of boards and commissions must be done by a majority vote of the Board of Selectmen. Section 512.
What was it before that? Was there no mention of how to remove?
It was the same, it just didn't say majority. It said removal by the
Just
board,
by the board, so
but the board can only act by
a majority.
majority vote.
Oh, okay.
So,
Just cleaning up language.
Yeah,
yeah, cleaning up
Simple
language.
enough.
tidying it up.
Fine by me.
So let me just let me just throw this out. I mean, just so I have it right in. So what if there is a tie? If we don't put this in, there has to be a majority vote. In other words, it's cleaning up the language because you could have a 3-3. And I know that, are you having a majority vote if the,
You can still have a tie. If it's a tie, then it's not a majority vote.
Right.
So it doesn't, the resolution doesn't pass.
okay.
But again, to George's earlier point, we do have difficulty getting volunteers to do boards and commissions, and we should not take it lightly that we're removing people from
Oh, no.
meetings, right? So I think it's important to have the clarity of majority.
Okay, we're good. Language fixed. What took the commission so long?
Right? Just breeze right through it.
Public safety, language change to expand police options from state trooper program, section 601. Would you say this is, and shall be the chief of police until a method of administering the police force independent of the resident trooper program? So the change is
Just clarity. It had
Just
independent.
clarification?
Yeah.
We were actually, I think the three of us were at that meeting, George and Jennifer. Jeff Tinley was there. They were asking questions about this, and I think my recollection of that meeting was the idea was there may be, if the town were to decide to move away from resident state trooper, there may be other ways to do it than just an independent local police department, as is currently stated in the charter. So this language sort of broadens, the possibilities, so to speak, I guess.
And there is talk about regionalization of police departments. I mean, they're getting back to what we were talking about with the economic development program. And there's talk about it. I don't know if it'd ever get to that point. But depending on what the state does, I think, some municipalities are going to be just too small but we'll cross that bridge. But okay, I'm
Seems
good with that.
appropriate. Seems appropriate.
I'm
Yeah,
good with it.
It does. It's a modernization of the language, basically.
Yep.
Can I,
Sure, you
probably late in the game for this, but just make a suggestion. I'm looking at our agenda and I'm seeing a number of people here that appear to be here for other items on our agenda and may not be as excited as we are to comb through our charter. And
Okay.
I'm wondering if we should come back to this.
I think we could.
And table this
Unless
so
somebody
that we
wants to go
can
through this.
deal with some of the other items that people might
Good
be
observation. Okay.
We're
here
almost done,
for.
though, no? I mean, we're almost
Are we?
down to the last
Just
couple of
almost
items.
Just making a suggestion.
All right, you want to keep going?
What else do we have up there?
Plow through it, folks. Let's get it done.
So we're at section 603. We only have,
Is there a page 8?
I don't think that's a bad suggestion. I don't want to, it's 8:30. We don't want to be,
Yeah.
can we
There's a fair amount left.
have a motion to
Move to table it till the end of the meeting?
table till the end of,
Or table it until after
New
new business?
have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Discussion? All in favor? Aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries? Thank you. Okay, so then we'll do that in the interest of our public. Charter visit. EMS committee, Mike is not here. to go over. I think he would have had some report.
Yeah, we did have a discussion with Mr. Fitch and Jeff Tinley a while back, and more to come. I'm gonna leave it to
So we'll
them.
get that at the
We did
next
make some
meeting.
progress, yep.
Okay. Jeremy Swamp Road extension. John Cattell is getting an engineering evaluation on the culvert, and so we have a specific idea of what, an outside engineer, and we'll have that hopefully by the next meeting, if that's okay. And then we'll have a little more information on that.
Can we also ask the planning, I thought I heard Joan talk about going to the planning commission, and there was additional discussion with them, and they were open to some different ideas. I didn't fully, I'm not
They may-
fully sure what happened at the last meeting of the planning
Were
commission,
you at
but
the
perhaps
planning?
we can,
I was not.
maybe we could talk to them and also get an update from Dolores or something as to
Yeah,
what
get an update from-
transpired at the planning commission in that regard.
And we'll get, hopefully have some engineering.
So we'll keep this on the agenda. for
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Leaps of Faith is on our agenda. There is a license agreement. Jeff Tinley is.
He was here.
Okay. That's all right. We do have the agreement. If there's any, do you have any questions on it? Any concerns?
Do they have their permit from First Light?
First Light?
Yes. Subject to this, yes.
Have they provided that copy to us,
Um,
or whatever document they have?
Don't hold me to this, I think yes, I think they have, and
They have?
it's
Well,
contingent
we should
upon our,
make sure we have everything on record.
yeah.
And what's our insurance exposure, liability?
They would have to give us name,
Name us as additional insured?
right.
It's Jeff.
Jeff is here. Jeff, they have questions on the license agreement? On Leaps of Faith. They asked, they do have their permit from First Light. Or, yeah, First Light.
They have a temporary permit for this year. It's for 1 year. Our permit, we have expiring at the end of October, just because of the fact that it's a driveway, and this is supposed to be for purposes of water skiing, water sports, recreation, and didn't want to get into issues of who has responsibility for snow and ice removal in the winter months, since they shouldn't be using it anyway. So, yeah, our license basically parallels the one that First Light granted, except that ours is shorter. But it can be renewed. If they want to have activities next season, they're going to have to, over the winter, go through another process with First Light to satisfy all the requirements for a permanent license.
And will they have to go through a process with us as well? Like, is there, I don't recall if there's language in there confirming that there's no obligation to renew it. Like, is there, it's up to us after October what we do.
It is.
Okay,
But
so we're
it's-
gonna, go ahead.
It's a very small piece of land, could only be used for a driveway. And, the genesis of this was that, Leaps of Faith was looking for a way to do this, and First Light was telling them, well, we can only grant a license to adjacent property owners to the First Light property. So we came up with the idea that if we gave them a license to use our driveway, what we're calling the driveway area, that might give them standing to get a license from First Light. And First Light went along with that, and they actually went ahead of us and issued their license and told us about it after they did it. But we did have conversations with them before that. But they did that, and so we were happy to, as far as I'm concerned anyway, to put this together and give them the right to pass and repass, and the requirement that they pave it and put a gate a functioning gate and appropriate signage.
So, but they have to get their permit from First Light renewed next year.
Yes.
This would, as long as that was renewed, we don't have to redo this every year? Or is it?
I mean, this terminates, so we wouldn't have to redo it in the sense that it would be the same license. We would just
re-sign it?
reissue it with a different term, yeah.
Okay.
Did the contract have a time frame when they can and can't use the facility? Or the-
With First Light?
Yeah.
No.
Does this contract have a time limit? I think it did. as I
Yeah,
recall.
it goes through October 31st
Okay.
of this year.
Because you're not water skiing in the winter, right?
Usually not, although.
Some people do.
As a youth, I remember
called ice fishing.
water skiing on Halloween on Long Island Sound. But
Nice.
that was,
So this just deals with our right-of-way, so they could access the property.
That's correct.
After that, the relationships with First Light as to what happens down there and
Yes.
all activities, that's between LOF and First Light.
yes, Brian Wood, the First Light's property manager, was very clear that everything that Leaps of Faith wants to do in terms of activities on the property can be done on First Light's property. The only thing they need our property for is to get in and out. Which is, good because, then the town isn't directing or actively involved in whatever the activities are. That's between them and First Light.
So if someone is injured during these activities, are we liable in any way? Is there any possibility that personal injury attorney is going to come after us because we've given them access to this
Well,
place?
That's
Well,
why the
there may be a
additional-
likelihood that a personal injury attorney would go after you just because you're the town of Southbury, but
Right.
there wouldn't be any legal basis for liability unless something happened on our property or because of something that was a condition on our property that was, a cause of the accident. But if it's something to do with the activities on the First Light property, we shouldn't have any
We should, we're
responsibility
not a
for it.
problem. So our property doesn't really go down the driveway very far, as I recall. It's only just a little bit of strip of land.
It is, and that's
Yeah.
because the property line is determined by an elevation line, and it slopes, I went down there
Very steep.
before this was done, it's steep, yeah, so before you get very far from the road, you're no longer on our property.
What happens if a lot of trash gets left behind? Who's responsible to clean that up? Because that's what I've seen. I've been down there a few times, and there's stuff all over the place. Diapers and food wrappers and shoes,
Well,
you know.
I would say Leaps of Faith is the person who has the permit for that.
Yeah, and
Right.
we don't control that property, First Light does, so, I mean, I'm just concerned that there's gonna be piles of stuff down there, and then it becomes an eyesore. and-
I think with them down there, there probably will be less, because,
Yeah, I mean, it is covered, as I recall, in the First Light license that, they have the right to require them to keep the property free, as we do, free of debris, litter, et cetera. So I think that the First Light license has the same provision, and, I've had a fair amount of experience with First Light with Brian in my capacity as a member of the Executive Board of Friends of the Lake on Lake Winona, and they're gonna police this. They're gonna, I think, be responsible. They have to. They're answerable to the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission under the terms of their license.
Well,
So-
I've just seen what's happened down there in the past, and concerned that it might happen again.
Sure.
well, this license, if it becomes an issue, it can be, it can be
We could not
revoke
renew
it
it.
or
yeah.
not renew it, and they can't go across. I mean, that's why
The
this
plan
works.
is to make this a yearly renewal every year, that we review it, or I'm hearing other things, that we want to make it a permanent thing?
My concept is that it is coterminous with the First Light license, whatever that is. That there wouldn't be a license to use this unless they also have a license to use the property below. And if they do, then I don't see any reason why this wouldn't be renewed for something that would be coterminous with whatever First Light grants them. But since we don't know what First Light will grant them, This is just sort of an interim step right now.
So they've given them the 1 year
They've given them
trial
1 year.
period essentially, yeah.
Yeah.
And this is conditional based on them getting that renewed? with
Yes.
First Light.
Yeah, if that license is not in effect, then this license automatically terminates.
What will we do about the parking issue that people were so concerned about when those people were just trespassing? And the residents that lived around there were really angry and irate about the traffic and the police not policing it or something. I forget exactly what they said. What do we?
Well, in the license agreement, all their parking has to be on, or First Light, it has to be on this, on
Right.
their property now.
They are agreeing under this license that there will be no parking other than on the First Light property.
Fabulous. Great.
So there's still no parking up and down the road. There's other places up around that don't have no parking on them that are further away, but that should not change.
Yeah.
And they have Humvees that are able to navigate that slope, I guess.
They're gonna have to do something with that.
Or it's gonna be a cable system, I'm not sure.
There is an open area across the street that has been used for parking, and, you know, that can be posted as well, because, again, Brian was very clear that everything they need to do, including all the parking that they would require, there's room down there. And if you go down there, it's, and if you look, or you look on an aerial map, it is a much bigger piece of property than you would think, looking at it just from the edge of the road.
Right, but the parking that you're referring to across the street is ours.
Right, and that's why I'm saying,
The residents
if we're
would
gonna
be-
control parking and not have residents be unhappy and not have a safety condition, I would recommend that be posted as well. My concern is, you know, I parked there when I went to look at it, and, because that's a safe place to park right now, but you have to cross the street on a curve, and people go pretty fast on that road, so I think anybody parking there if there's parking there on a regular basis and people crossing the road, with no crosswalk, no signs to protect them, that's a dangerous condition, and that's why I drafted this so that all the parking would be on the First Light property.
But you know the overflow's gonna go there. It is gonna go there.
That's
It's
an
just- it's
enforcement
human
issue.
nature, So we'll have to enforce that, because we're exposing
Correct.
ourselves to liability then, if somebody does get hit.
Yeah. I mean, part of the condition is that if they're having an event, so I think if there's an event, their parking has to be down below, or on First Light's property in an event. So that's part of their agreement. So if the cars are parking up above are part of that event, they're not conforming, and I think we would ask LOF the adaptive skiers to enforce, hey, you need to tell your,
Yes.
we can't have overflow coming up in here. I
Right.
still am a little, not concerned with this, but I'm concerned that in the event that they're not having an event, that we do have people that do park and go fishing. They park it, so that's, so I think we need to adjust that as we see how that develops.
If they clear the land, and I imagine they will, from all the weeds and brush, other people are gonna go down there, and it could well be similar to what we've seen in the past.
Yeah.
With
gotta
the
be
No
enticing.
parking that
overcrowding and,
exists.
what's that?
That no parking signs exist now
Yeah,
to kind
well,
of
they
limit
do,
that.
but it didn't always stop people from parking there, but I guess we don't have the ability to tow cars, do we? I mean, they could just get a ticket, maybe.
Well,
I don't know how we police it.
we don't want to, there is from time to time people that, like I said, do want to go fishing, they do want to go down there for, when they're not, perhaps not doing an event. So there's going to have to be some limited parking around that area. I think we have to look and see how it,
We'll see how it plays out.
monitor it.
Plays out,
I'm
we'll
concerned
adjust it
about many
accordingly.
things, and I want to see how it plays
Yeah.
out.
I mean, this does call for them to have a locking gate, so that means that if they're not using it, then the access isn't there, which means presumably you're not going to have groups going down there. But again, if a few people want to go fishing or swimming or whatever, they're not going to be able to go through the gate if it's locked. So I think you're going to have to make a judgment about whether you want the gate locked as a rule or not locked as a rule, but you have to see how it goes, I guess.
Isn't there a gate there now, but you can just kind of climb right over it?
Yeah.
It's just like a bar.
Yeah.
It keeps vehicles out maybe, but it doesn't keep somebody who wants to just
I
walk
don't
in.
think the intent was to keep the people out as the vehicles. That's a vehicle,
Right.
Yeah.
so.
Just if I may, and I'll preface what I'm about to say by saying I'm supportive of this. And I think we need to be sure to enforce the terms, and it's important that it's temporary so we can monitor and see if this works, and if it works, you know, perhaps this is an avenue to start using that piece. But I have received questions about some things I've been involved in my real job. So in the interest of full disclosure, I do represent the town of Newtown, and I have been involved in litigation with this organization and their executive director, having solely the issues solely dealing with zoning issues on a residential property. And it was a zoning enforcement action, which was resolved by stipulation that simply had notification requirements from the organization. So I just state that as a matter of record for full disclosure, because I have received questions from people and whatnot. And that's what that was in Newtown.
Okay. So I'm looking for a resolution authorizing the first selectman to sign the agreement.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Made and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? And it carries. So we'll get that done for them. Okay. Policy prohibiting pets and animals in municipal buildings. The town clerk is here. We have had, this is,
She stepped down. She had to go.
what?
I think she left. She had to go.
Oh, okay. The crowd is thinning. Joel, give me a call? Okay.
Take care.
All right, so we're looking for a policy, and we're running into a situation where during dog licensing and at other times, people are coming in with pets into the building. They're possibly urinating on the floor. We've also had an issue where there was a stroller got moved, the dog had a hard time with it, and it could be a potential issue from a liability standpoint. So we're looking at creating a policy that would prohibit pets and animals in municipal buildings, but that does not include service dogs. And it says, ask Lynn to come on 7/18, which we did. But
She was here.
Jason didn't make that motion quick enough.
She was here, I know. So I was looking, I'm like, people want to be
I think
here.
we lost her.
So, you have from our ACO and what we have here, limiting these animals. They've brought them in, they set them on the counter. My dog doesn't bite, yes it does. So we have our potential liability with people and with our employees in the office.
Need a motion?
Yes.
To me, it's obvious why you would need this, so I don't need to spend too much time about the why. I think the how is probably
Right.
important. Make sure we don't keep the animal shelter on the list of places where dogs can't go, since that's where some of them need to go. But no, I mean, the need for such a thing, I think, is obvious.
Yeah, there's no debate here, really. Just get it done.
I think it makes sense. The library board actually added this to its policies a couple years ago, and Jeff Tinley worked at it with them. There's language that exists in recent history that we've used in the library that we can probably be put together to apply to the rest of the municipal buildings.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah, so I think we will we'll get that. We don't have a policy ready here. We can get that drafted for the next meeting and get the policy out, or get it ready out to everybody, and we'll make a adoption of that policy, and we'll go from there. All right? Emergency Management Director job description. Is Scott first still here? Can you bring that up? Has everybody had a chance to read it?
I assume that there's no salary associated with this job, or is there? I just don't, I didn't see that listed in there, so it's a volunteer thing, right? Or wrong,
well,
I just don't know.
Some background, I'm still the assistant, or the deputy, however you want to say it. When I first approached First Selectman a couple of years ago as a volunteer, I said I'm not going to take money for it because I have another job, much like we were discussing earlier with the pro tem taking over. I can't afford to take off on my other job to do this full-time. On a volunteer basis, I will say it has to be full-time because of the stuff I'm doing right now. I'm doing a tabletop exercise for Region 15 School District next month. I'm putting probably about 60 hours worth of work into developing that, working with the school district, doing that. Reviewing plans for some of the assisted living homes around here, and I'm working with the state right now to get those plans approved to sign off on those. There's a lot of things that are going on behind the scenes that need to be done, and you need a full-time emergency management director for the town. I can't do everything right now, so I'm trying to do as much as I can. This person needs to step in and take off a lot of it, but I can still assist with that from behind the scene. The salary I'm going to leave up to the board. I'm not going to recommend that, but I am going to say it should be a full-time person. And it should be a full-time person with a lot of the things that are in there, with those requirements in there, because there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes in this job. But
Just
to answer
surprised
your-
that we need a full-time person to do this, but I don't know much about it, so if you say we do, I guess.
Well,
we do.
it's not, it's the stepchild. It's the child that, okay, when things are going around, they're just kind of ignored, but when an emergency hits, they're the one that you want right there. And I don't mean that in a bad way, but it's under the radar a lot when nothing's going on. But that's due to all the planning. So when we do have a tornado, this person is networked in, this person has already worked with other organizations, brought those other organizations in to plan. We're deficit on a lot of the plans that I'm working on right now because the state just put out a new 217-page template that I'm probably 30% filled out, and I've got to get back to them. But a lot of that stuff takes a lot of time. If you have a good plan, and if you have somebody and people that are familiar with that plan, your emergency will go a lot better. Every emergency and every event's different. They're all ad hoc. But if you've done the plans behind the scenes, you know which pieces and things you can take from different plans and execute those plans in support of the town. So I bring 20 years experience to it. Not that I'm the best guy for it, but my experience takes up a lot of those things that are requirements in there that people should at least be familiar with if they're going to do this job. It helps me do the job a lot better. The next person or the person that you hire to be the actual director should have a lot of those requirements because they've got to understand what's going on behind the scenes. They can do the job just as well as anybody else can. To make it part-time, I think is going to be disingenuous to the town. Because then if you have a part-time person, they're like, well, I'm only part-time, I'm only working this X amount of hours a week. They're not getting a lot of the stuff done on the behind the scenes that you actually need to do and have done. So I get it with the town finances. This is my recommendation. It's not you have to do this. This is just my recommendation to the town. And that's, unfortunately, you folks get to make the hard decision on this one.
Can you tell me what similarly sized communities do for this function?
Some have a regional function where they take a regional area and they go, okay, you're emergency management director for a county. I come from the state of Texas where we have counties down there. A lot of you got some of these counties that do it. Some of the other states have that function and that structure. Other sized towns like this, I'm going to tell you right now, in Connecticut, most of them don't. They don't have a full-time person, or it's their fire marshal or their fire chief. My recommendation against that is, when you have an actual emergency happen, those folks need to be doing that fire job. You need to have some person assisting the person that sits in the first selectman seat, or first select person seat, whatever it's gonna be called,
It's okay.
to advise
He, she,
them.
or they.
He, she, or they, to advise that person to run the EOC for them so they can be the face of the town, saying, we've got it under control, our emergency management director's right here, he, she, or they is gonna fill you in on what's going on. But to have the fire marshal do that, 90% of the time they can do that. The 10% of the time when they can't do that is when everything's gonna be really, really bad. And you're gonna go, oh, we should have had another person here. If you have 3 to 5 people to do it that in the town, you can get away without having a full-time emergency management director. You're gonna have to delegate and parse those duties out, though, to those 3 to 5 people and make sure that each person is responsible for set things. That's gonna be a full-time job trying to manage that. It can be done. It's just gonna be an added burden on the first selectman's office. So, and again, I'm not trying to pronounce gloom and doom here. This is just my recommendation of, if you want the best, this is the way to do it. This is a starting point. If you say, you know, we can't do it, okay, fine. Let's work to get it to where we can manage it on a different way. That's good too, but if you want my recommendation, this is it.
Putting aside the full-time, part-time, or
Yep.
split job discussion for a minute, under this description, now, I don't know enough about all these various functions, but this job description seemed intense to me.
It is.
Right. And are we limiting the pool of people that
Yes,
can
and you should.
perform the job too much so that we don't get good applicants who don't have all of those criteria?
Can you scroll down, Maureen, to some of the duties and responsibilities? The consults with, that's networking. Anybody can do that.
Right.
They just got to know who they consult with, and those people need to know who they are. I'll just go through it piece by piece. Consults with is easy. Directly supervises, if we grow the emergency management department, you're going to have maybe an assistant or two or somebody that's working under them. Like when I continue to volunteer to help this person, they would supervise me. I would be one of those people in the emergency management department. Emergency Operations Center staff, when activated, and Jason, you were there, when the staff is in there, that emergency management director has tactical direction over those people in there. They still report to the department heads, but the department head has said, okay, when you're sitting in the Emergency Operations Center, the emergency management director or the EOC director can tell you that you need to make a phone call. You don't need to call me and do that. So that's where we're going down there. Duties and responsibilities. Directs the planning, organize, execution of the local emergency management and homeland security activities. It's working with DEMAS, the state agency. So essentially, they're going to take those duties that DEMAS says, hey, this is what the state recommends doing. And they're going to take those duties down to the town level and go, okay, we can do these duties in this town because we do this. For instance, we don't have a port in the town. So we can scratch that from the state plan because we don't have to supervise a port. But we do have waterways, so that adds some other things in there, but they're within the state plan template. For instance, I believe I found there's 7 dams that we're supposed to have emergency action plans for in this town that are Class B and Class C dams. I didn't even know that until I started going through the template, and the state of Connecticut has 2 of them, and they haven't given me plans yet. And that's a requirement of their plan of us, for us to have those plans, so I gotta go back to them. So was it the chicken or the egg was first? I don't know. These are the things that I'm doing behind the scenes that I'm trying to get done, that this is why you need a full-time person, or my recommendation would have a full-time person. All right, neighboring emergency management directors, we have a meeting every the month, or every quarter, up in Watertown, Region 5. It's made up of emergency managers from some of the other towns. A lot of them are the fire chiefs. Again, I recommend against doing that because the fire chief should be out in the field doing the incident command direction on the spot, not working in the EOC. Again, my recommendation. Keeps the first selectman fully informed on all emergency management matters as his or her representative dealing with other government, private, and volunteer organizations. Again, networking. You're running the emergency management plans, bringing all these folks in. Just like we found out with the tornado, the Southern Baptists, when they came in, volunteer organizations are huge. The VOAD is a great resource in the state. We should be having, this emergency management director should be going to those meetings every month and coordinating with those folks. Develops, maintains hazard mitigation, preparedness, emergency response, recovery plans. That's the big four from FEMA. You develop these plans to get through everything. The state provides a lot of help developing these plans. They're thick. They're plans that are very detailed, but the state has put out templates which is kind of fill in the blank. But one of those plans is 217 pages long. That's what I'm working on right now. Public information program. The Board of Selectmen run the town. The Board of Selectmen have a message to the town when things are going on. The emergency management director's job is to take your message and make sure it gets out through the emergency channels. Scroll down, Lori, please. Okay. Assist local government departments and agencies in the preparation of the department's SOP in support of the town emergency operations plan. If we were to have say a gas leak in this building and we had to relocate all the functions of this building to somewhere else, we should have a plan on file to do that already. I would help develop that plan in conjunction with the First Selectman's office, in conjunction with every department in this building, going, okay, where would you go? What would you do? How would you do it? What would you need to get it done? We don't have that plan right now. We have it ad hoc. We're going to pack up and go somewhere else, but we don't have a detailed plan. Regular disaster exercise. We can do an exercise for a hurricane. We could do a snow exercise every year. We need to start doing that annually. That's going to require some money, overtime for folks. Staff just maintains an emergency operations center. We've got that. Completes and submits municipal disaster reports after the disaster. That's a given. Okay, directs a training program to prepare the emergency management organization for emergency operations. That comes back up under the organizers, oversees regular disaster exercise. Secures and maintains information regarding facilities, resources, local jurisdictions. Essentially, it's records. Where are your plans at? Where are they kept on file? Do we have a copy somewhere else in case the building where they're at is inaccessible? Just like the dam plan, where we heard during the tornado that we thought the Chippewa Dam was possible breach and was compromised. We came over, got that plan, got it back and said, okay, we need to call these people because they should be doing this. So these are all the things that they should be doing. Chairs of local planning, LEPC. Scroll down some more. Man, we can go on and on ad nauseam. Go down to the duties, which I believe, Jason, is what you were talking about. Betsy, if you could scroll down. Keep going down. Next page. Here we go. Okay. All of that stuff that they're responsible for doing is based, if they know this stuff right here, it's not that hard to do. Working knowledge of the National Incident Management System, NIMS, that's a basic for FEMA. Anybody worth their salt in the police department, in the fire department, or in the emergency management field understands what that means. It's just a working knowledge of the ICS system. Almost all of your first responders are briefed on it. They know how it works already. It's not something that's new to anybody in this field. Knowledge of the background objectives of national, state, local emergency management programs. If you understand NIMS, that's nested under there. Knowledge of FEMA policies and procedures. Again, going back to NIMS, that is a FEMA program. Basic knowledge of the Robert T. Stafford Act and Economy Act. Those are two acts. By the Economy Act as reimbursement for other federal agencies during a time of disaster, supporting other federal agencies. Robert T. Stafford Act allows us to declare an emergency and get funds from the federal government through FEMA. Structure functions of interrelationships in national, state, and local governments. Again, that's networking. How does the national government treat emergencies? How does the state nest up under that? How does the local government work with the state and work with the regions and the state and the federal government? Methods of organization, planning, management, budgeting, and supervision. They're going to be a department head. They should be planning an annual budget. They should be able to supervise folks. Ability to evaluate situations, exercise good judgment, making decisions. When the defecation hits the rotary oscillator, you got to be able to maintain your cool and go, okay, here's what's going on. How do we fix it? And a lot of the times it's like, oh my goodness, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. You figure out what's going on, then you start small steps and start working your way there. Ability to prioritize, translate guidance, and lead people during times of crisis. You don't want to see the guy or the girl behind the podium or they behind the podium panicking and going, I don't know what to do. All right, let's figure it out. You folks tell me what we needed to get done. We'll relay that to the first selectman's office and go from there. Written or verbal skills to prepare and deliver executive level letters, reports, and presentations. This person should be making presentations to the board just like we did during the tornado, updating you of the progress and providing reports and letters to the same effect. So even though there are a lot of things up here, the qualifications don't require somebody with 20 years of experience. I've done all this stuff for probably 20 years, so it's easy for me. The qualifications are maybe 3 years max of really studying a lot of stuff or being involved in the middle of some things. So even though it looks like a lot, it's not. And I know that was long-winded, but I hope it answered your question because I wanted to take you through kind of the whole thing.
No, it did. So during our budget process this year, we discussed the funding a part-time position. And the first selectman's proposal was $8,000 was allocated for a part-time position. Can you just explain to me what the plan was then, when we went through the budget process, how we were going to do that versus sort of where we are now?
Well, I think previously we were working off of stipends. And we've been told by our labor attorney that you really can't pay a stipend especially when they go into, if they get called in. A stipend doesn't, you can give a stipend to somebody who's working full-time, like if we have a fire marshal who works full-time, they get a stipend for taking on that extra duty. You can do it that way. But the more we're looking at this, the work that needs to be done, and frankly, the fact that I think we're going to see more of these emergencies coming up from our weather, it seems to be going that way. So I think this is Scott's recommendation is to go full-time.
That's a recommendation. I understand the constraints that the board's under, but I don't want to give you a recommendation that's half-baked, but at the same time, I understand this is the gold standard. If you take the silver standard, you're still much better off than doing nothing in where we were years ago. So
I just did a quick search online at the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and the median salary nationwide for Director of Emergency Management is $74,420. And they have a map, sort of a color map of where the salaries are, and Connecticut is higher. It's actually in the 80,000 range. So if you want to hire
minimum
somebody
wage.
with 5 years experience, which is kind of what they're talking about, that's the kind of number you're looking at.
But
I don't think we've ever discussed this in the budget process, other than
no,
you know,
I
sort
don't
of
believe it has
part-time
been.
role.
Now, are those? I don't recall seeing that exact page, George. But are those for large towns? Does it say?
I don't know. It's just people with that title. That's
Yep.
what they make, you know. And it shows you the different salary ranges. You know, the 10 percentile, the 90 percentile. 90 percentile, you're up at 141,000. Imagine that's probably a big city.
I think those are the large metropolitan
Yeah.
cities.
And at the lower end, it's 40,000. So maybe we'll be closer to the lower end. I don't know.
But right now, we don't have a grade in here or a number. That's what Scott was.
And
Yeah.
I left that out purposely.
Left that out, but I think this is, you know, our budget set for this year. You know, I don't think we're looking to this is the gold standard, but this is what an emergency management director.
It's what it looks like on paper, and a lot of that was pulled directly from the state.
Scott, what would your opinion be, or what negatives could you see if this was one of those things where we said maybe we could regionalize this, maybe with the towns that touch us?
To be honest, I think there's a lot to be gained from that. Because if you have an event, chances are it's not going to be so localized to where you can't share resources. The problem is you're going to have a food fight between your first selectman or your mayor as they're going to be in my town and they're going to work here. Get it. We already have a regionalized structure that sits above the towns. And we already have a regionalized incident management teams within the state of Connecticut, which they started to pull back funding for, and this was right after the tornado. And I wrote a couple letters and I volunteered to go in front of the state and talk. It's like, you cannot get rid of those teams because they provide us with an ability to operate an EOC without us having to have a full-time staff. You can have 4 people sit in that EOC from the town, take that IMT, and run the whole EOC, which is a fabulous concept, and it goes towards that regionalization. If we have an event that covers the state, and this was a discussion I had with the IMT members, we're going to be in such deep doo-doo that it doesn't matter that we don't have enough people. It's going to be all the volunteers coming in. What can you do? Can you file papers? Sit down. I need you to file these reports. Can you do accounting? I need you to track these expenses. We're going to be at that level. But if we're at that level, it probably wouldn't matter how many people we have because we probably wouldn't be able to get them in anyway. So regionalization, Justin, I think is probably the way to go. We're not going to get there right now, again, because we're going to be dealing with food fights. No, I want him to sit in my town because I'm going to have my hand on him. I'm going to have that, what we call the military coffee con. I've got coffee command of you because I can smell the coffee off your breath. So that's the problem we're going to deal with. But I think that's what we should start looking at. I think that's the way we should start going. Train up a regional team that takes the talents from all the towns, that takes those people in that we have that might not be resident in this town and go, okay, but again, with the tornado, it was a large area, so what do we do if we have a regional team from here, Brookfield, New Milford, which all got whacked? Then we have to have agreements with, hey, Cheshire, we need your regional team to come over here, and that's what we did with the IMT. We took the IMT from the east side when the west side was tied up over here. So it works.
Is there somebody at Demas we could talk to that might have some advice on this at the state level?
There are folks
Probably.
down there. How do you want to do it? Do you want to bring them into a Board of Selectmen meeting? I can set something up. There's a lot of people, and some are going to tout the regional plan also, which, let's face it, it's cost savings.
Maybe they don't know as much about it as you do, but it might be interesting to hear what they have to say.
Oh, they know a lot more than I do.
I doubt it. I know what you've done.
So I can set it up if we want to bring them into a Board of Selectmen meeting, or however you want to do
Leave
it.
up to Jeff if he wants to do it.
Yeah, well,
Okay.
I mean, this is, we're getting this up and running for discussion purposes and what it takes and what, we obviously, we've moved a little with our experience with the tornado last year. And recognizing, I just got something from this afternoon late about a task force about ice damming on rivers and floods and stuff, and
I thought you were going to talk about deportations, just trying to be funny. Sorry.
So we're there's so who goes to that, and then you're searching around saying, okay, so who do you send? You send the first selectman, and there's an election, and there's a new first selectman. Do you send your fire marshal? They have an election. They have a new fire chief, and for a number of reasons why.
Mhm.
So, I think we're moving forward on this emergency management and expectations of citizens to respond. I'm trying to be careful, but with the last tornado and the response that happened and how well it went, have we raised the bar, the expectation of our emergency management and the handling of a issue? But I think we're looking is we experience what the citizens are expecting when there is an emergency like that and what they want from their government. And I don't think it's, I think we're moving to a higher level on this, this issue.
I would agree. We still have ways to go. You always have the last mile in any logistic situation is the toughest. You're going to have folks out at the last mile, and you're going to have folks at the first mile. There's going to be a difference of opinion wherever you sit in that. That is the emergency management director and the logistician's nightmare is that those folks in the last mile, you got to get to them, but you can't get there until you clear the roads or you get the delivery mechanism set up to get through the first mile. We got through the first mile a lot in the tornado response. We got very close to the last mile. There were a couple of last miles there, but we've already put some other things in place that would shorten that if we did the exact same again. The problem's going to be the next event that we have is not going to be like the tornado. And unfortunately, a lot of people are going to plan for the tornado and have that in their head and go, oh, it's going to be the tornado, so I've already got everything set up when it's going to be something completely different. So it goes back to what Eisenhower said, plans are great, but the plans are worthless once you start executing. It's the process that you went through to do the plans is what's going to get you through the next execution. So we did set the bar high. There are some expectations out there that we do have to manage, but folks also have to be aware that they need to be able to take care of themselves because the next one could be completely different.
So not to look a gift horse in the mouth, and I'm very, very grateful for all that you're doing, and especially volunteer-wise. LEPC, where are we with them? Is it because we don't?
No, it's not.
Okay.
I started working on the document from the state because they put out a brand new template and they said, yeah, you got about 45 days to get it done.
Oh, jeez.
So I'm like, okay. I had a meeting of the LAPC scheduled. I had a trip I had to go on. I canceled it. I'm working on the document. I'm trying to get that done. What I'm going to do as soon as I get the document done, we're going to submit it, but I'm going to throw it right on the table in front of the LAPC and say, okay, we got to go through the document, rip it up, put it back together, and then we'll submit that again after everybody gets their cut on it. Right now, it's just building it. And like I said, I found out we have 7 dams in town,
Right.
2 of which the state owes us plans for, and I call them up and that, well, no. Well, my document says I got to have these plans and you own it from the owner and you own it. I'm chasing a lot of these things
Sure.
down.
Can
The LAPC is not disbanded, it's just on
Right,
hold
so
for-
is there a way to, because I know what you said about you can't do the fire marshal and the emergency management
You-
director. I
you-
know
you
that-
can.
You can, I mean, it
But
was,
it's
we used to
gotta,
have it
yeah,
that way.
it's got to be spread out and get amongst more than one person. That would be my recommendation.
Okay, so is there a function on here that maybe could be delegated over to the fire marshal that we have now? It obviously needs some training, I guess, and I don't know what his level of expertise for all of this
No,
is, but.
he's familiar with the
Right.
instant command system,
So
so
he can
it-
help you in the interim while we're working
he
through
is.
this.
He's working on a lot of the fire stuff with that plan.
Okay.
So I am involved. I went with Public Works. I went down to the PD. I went to the fire marshal. We've already gone through those parts of the plan. So a lot of it right now is gathering information. I'm working with Public Health right now because I've got to get a mountain of information from them to put in the plan. I was working with the ACO because I had to get some information on all the vet clinics that we had in town. So a lot of it's building the database that are disparate parts all over the town. And until I get the database built, if I put the plan in front of people, it's a template, and they're like, well, okay, yeah, it looks good. So
But as
when
long
I
as you're
get- yeah.
engaging other people to
I am,
help you, I think it's great. I just sound, okay,
Now, well,
thank
a
you.
lot of it, though, is when you say help, and I'm getting the data from them right now, because if I let this 217-page document go out to 20 different people, and 20
Mhm.
different people make corrections all over the
No, don't
document.
do that. Yeah.
That's my problem.
Yeah, okay. Yeah,
So
I'm not
we're
suggesting
we're getting there. As soon as it is done, it goes right back out to the LEPC and said, okay, now we've got a document. Give me the line out and line ins, just like we did with the charter, the red lines, underline and strike throughs. And we'll go through it. It'll be presented, approved, because whoever's sitting in the first selectman seat still got to sign off on it.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you, thank you.
Hey, you have-
So, Jeff, do you see this as sort of the beginning of the discussion for us to get into what this function is going to be? Or are you looking to immediately hire a full-time emergency management director?
I think this is a discussion we're going to have to carry on. We're going to get some more information. I don't think this is, we don't have a salary grade, but I think eventually we're gonna be working toward, I see us working towards this.
So it seems to me that this part's probably going to take a little time, and we're outside of the budgetary process,
Right.
which is, this is actually the way it should be done, right? So we're going to have discussions now leading into the budgetary process. We have all the data and whatnot, so if we're going to head in this direction.
The only problem you got, though, is if I'm out of town, who's going to sit in the seat?
That's what I was going to say next.
Yeah.
That's my next point. I think this is very important. Like, I think we need to have an emergency management director. So we did put into the budget some money, and I know it's not the gold standard, but I feel like we need to be doing something now, because my concern is if you're on a flight and something happens, who's that guy? So.
Or girl.
Or they.
They.
Who's the person who's going to, stand in that role? So in the interim, as we're going through this process and defining the role and determining whether it's going to be full-time or part-time or whatnot, can we take that $8,000 in the budget and make a stipend position for a full-time employee currently, so that we have a backstop, so we have someone who's is taking some stuff off your plate. I mean, you're a volunteer doing all this stuff.
Yeoman's work.
And two, is sort of ready to go in that scenario. So that's one question I had. And then the other thought I had was, would this function work, just as we're sort of evolving into having this discussion? And, if we have a guy like you that's the deputy, right? You're probably the most qualified guy we're going to find for this, position. So if you're there, as you're the deputy, and if we have a stipend position for someone else, could we manage with a part-time director? If we have like a full-time town employee who's always here, get a stipend to do X tasks. You're here, who's doing these tasks, and then we have someone who's heading the department, who's part-time, who sort of oversees those functions.
You
Just
could.
as concepts
Yeah,
to think
you-
about.
You certainly could. Again, the only problem, what if I move out of state? What if I relocate or something happens to me? Yeah. I would say right now we need to do something. Be it if we recharacterize the stipend to where it is applicable to pay somebody or do something, absolutely. I'm not going to leave tomorrow and go somewhere else. But my point is to set the town up for success 5, 10 years, 20 years down the road. This is where we need to start talking about this. And the discussion right now is what we need to be doing. I don't know what the decision is going to come out of here. I'm not going to apply for the full-time job again, because my other job is much easier on me. And it puts food on my table. But I enjoy doing this stuff. And as long as I enjoy doing this stuff, I'll be here to help. And that's what I told Region 15. I said, I'm volunteering my services up there to help them with their plans too, because I got kids in the school district. It's giving back. So I don't mind doing this. But again, if my family decides in a few years, we're going to relocate to somewhere else, or we're going to do something different and move out of town, then you're stuck in a lurch. And if I've been sitting here like this, hiding all my toys from everybody, there's a void here, and I don't want to do that, because I still want to protect the folks in the town. So, again, I didn't want to give you a half-baked solution, so I gave you the gold standard. If we're not going to do the gold standard, that's okay, because there's a ton of ways to peel the onion.
Because we're pretty far from the gold standard.
I kind of figured that, but that's okay. But at least if we know where we want to go,
Right.
then we're starting to walk that way to get there. And again, there's multiple ways to peel an onion, so this is just one. And I didn't want to give you 20, because then we got analysis of paralysis by analysis going, okay, now let's start walking this way, and if we veer off the path, that's okay, but at least we know what we're walking towards. That would be my recommendation. And again, the skills, required knowledge, skills, and abilities, there is a lot up there, but it's not esoteric. It's not something that people don't have coming out of college if they got an emergency management degree. They've got all this stuff up there. They really do. They just don't have the experience behind them yet. And maybe some of them do if they went back to college after they started another career or did something else. So,
I did a quick web search of towns in Connecticut that have emergency management directors or offices. Weston, Connecticut, for example, has a Department of Emergency Management, but the emergency management officer is a police officer, so I'm assuming he does it part-time. It's Joseph Maselli, has his phone number and email address, so it's probably not a full-time thing. Weston, you know, somewhat similar in,
In size.
yeah,
So
just
my,
FYI.
Scott, we've been very fortunate that Scott lives in town. We're fortunate that a lot of the people who have helped us in different departments quietly or developing everything from our IT department. Scott, because of the working with the storm, and he's moved us, I think, a long ways ahead of where we would if we didn't have him. You know, getting these plans in place. I mean, this is a big task to take on all that and understand it and get us everything together. So we thank you for that. And I think it's like anything else. If we get a structure in place and up and running, it'll be easier,
much easier.
much easier for that person. And there is a couple ways we can do look at or start, maybe with Scott's help and another person. One thing you could do is the fire marshal's job is full-time. The fire marshal is inspections and
We
everything.
have a lot of issues in the fire department. He doesn't have time for anything.
You know, the fire marshal is no longer fire chief, but we do have deputy fire marshals who give us time working on, and they can work on this sort of thing. That's a thought that we could work with, maybe to start with. And understanding that it's not a stipend, it's going to be, okay, you're going to be coming in, working on this with, you know, and getting familiar with it and working towards that, if that makes any sense.
I'll throw out another reference here. The town of Ellington, which we're quite familiar with here, has a whole department of emergency management, and they do have an emergency management director, but he also handles veteran service rep, whatever that means. And they have 2 deputy directors. I imagine those are stipends or very part-time positions.
That would be more doable than a fire marshal or a fire chief, because if you've got an emergency, the veteran services, you're going to have veteran services actively taking care of some of the veterans and some of those people, but it's not going to be as intense.
Right,
At the same response that a fire chief or a fire marshal would have during an actual emergency. That's much more doable than a fire marshal or a police officer sitting in this position. The issue would be that I would assume that veteran services individual has a lot of this training on the outside, other than maybe they were a former first responder, so they've gotten a lot of this training somewhere else.
They've got a whole website with a whole tab on emergency management. And they talk about the community emergency response team, and there's a picture with about 25 people standing there. So apparently they put together a whole team. I'm surprised they have in a town that size, they would have a veteran affairs rep. That's something I've never even heard of before.
Well, you got Bradley up there with the National Guard,
Oh, is that what it is?
Air Guard, right there by Ellington.
Okay.
I think I think unless Tammet does the Veterans Affairs
She
rep,
handles that?
I think you have to have one.
Oh.
I'm not sure that's the same there, but.
It could be.
Right, but we do have that.
So, I'm just sort of in my mind thinking of a 2-step approach. Like, while we're engaged in these discussions about what this function should be, isn't it better than nothing to give a stipend to our fire marshal or a police officer who's qualified to be in that position
Should we need
if
them?
something happens and is available to us, and has some training, experience,
yes and no.
knowledge? In the interim, I'm talking, because right now it's
Right now
I'm
you
talking
have
about
nothing.
from where we are right now.
Right.
That's all.
The trip up with that is if you really need them and I'm not here, you're probably going to need them out on the road more than you're going to need them in here. So then you're left again with a vacuum at this spot during an event. That's the only problem I see with that, and that's why I'd recommend against using specifically an EMS person, because you're probably going to need them out there doing their job. Just like in the tornado with George Slavey. He was out doing his job on the road. And it's not to say you can't, but that's going to be the issue that's going to come up when you need that person in here and they're like, well, do you need me on the road or do you need me in here? And that's when it falls back to whoever's sitting in that seat. Then all the duties fall on you, and you're trying to run the town and get it back up to running 100% on this side and trying to deal with everything on this side. I hope you got a good clone. That's the only issue. But that's the natural inclination, Jason, to do that. I recommend against it just because of that.
I'm not suggesting it as a permanent solution.
No, I understand.
I'm talking about today. What can the town do today?
God forbid we have a tornado hit next week or something.
Right.
I thought with the thunderstorms, we can have one yesterday. I saw their cloud was starting to rotate a little south of here. I was like, oh, this is going to be really interesting.
Because we do have some funding, and what can we do today to make the function better than it is today in the event that you're not here if something happens? Or is there someone else in town, some other town employee that could fulfill this function?
Asking police to
you're not
do it,
there.
it's kind of, the police contract negotiations, and it's so complicated, I don't know if that's an easy thing to do.
The other issue, well, police generally, when something happens, they want to go to the call.
Mhm.
And that I do know that has happened.
Yep. Well, and your fire department and your police officers are your high-demand, low-density assets. They're great when nothing's going on because then you have an excess capability. But again, when something happens, you don't have enough of those folks to go around. So to task one of them with this in a planning perspective, saying, okay, you can help with the plans, you can help build some of this stuff is probably really good. Maybe the deputy fire chiefs, bring in some of those folks in, and it would involve the contract negotiations with the police. But what you need is an individual that can sit here and take on the chief operating officer responsibilities to run the emergency. They wouldn't be the executive officer because that's always the first selectman, whoever's in that seat. But they've got to be the COO of that event. They've got to have the ability to execute. They've got to have the ability to be in there 20 hours a day if they're needed. You can't do that more than a couple of days because you got to get some rest. So now we come to the part, if we run a 24/7 operation, if you do a true 24/7 operation, I've lived this multiple times, it takes 5 people for every seat. So if I've got 6 people here to run 24/7 operations more than 3 weeks, I need 30 people. So we're already at a manpower deficit. Knock on wood, we won't have to go 24/7, so that alleviates a lot of that pain right there. The problem is, how many people can you go deep in a position which you actually need to take the load off of everything else? Right now, taking a fire responder or a police officer is the easiest way to go. But it could come back to bite you real quick if you actually needed them to sit in this position. That's my advice. But it's natural fit. They already have 90% of those duties. They already do them. They understand NIMS. They understand instant command system. They understand command and control. They certainly understand networking because they do it all the time. They have counterparts all over the state that they work with often. They do that. But when you need them to act in this position, when you really need them is when you're not going to have them because they're going to be out responding to something. So it's not an easy question to answer. That is the natural inclination to do it, and that's the easiest way to do it, as long as you're aware that when you need them in here and you stand up that EOC, you're probably going to need them on the road more.
So
So,
what's your next step, thought here?
Well,
you're between a rock and a hard place.
Yes.
And this is not intentional to put you there.
no,
We've been there for a long time, but this is going to get out from that. You're already sticking your arm out and trying to get around the rock. So this is goodness.
There's a number of things we can look at. Number one, is there is there somebody out there that desired to work part-time? To start off, can we utilize a deputy fire marshal who's committed? They would have to, there again, we'd have to you have to coordinate when that person is here or when they're not.
There is another solution
Okay,
to bridge a gap. And it could be a long-term solution until we see in the budget enough to hire a full-time manager. Another recommendation would have a cadre of people that are trained, that have exercised and been checked out, that when you have an event, they're on a contract to come in. And they sit in your supervisory positions in your EOC. They're their own contract, getting paid an hourly rate. They're not going to be cheap, but you're not going to have to pay them a full year salary. That could be a bridge to get you where you need to go in 5 years to get to the gold standard. All of your retired police officers, all of your retired fire department personnel have this training. The problem is you're going to need to bring them in, you're going to need to check them out, and then you're going to have to negotiate with them what the pay is. But it can be done, but it's not a quick solution like you're saying, Jason. That's a timely solution, but it could be a bridge to get you 5 years down the road when Dan finds enough nickels that have fallen out of his pocket and budget dust to get this to fruition. So it's not pulling, it's taking your idea kind of and taking some of the retired folks out there and going, okay, hey, we need your services. That can be easily done.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what the best answer is. I'm just looking for
No, but it's a bridge off of your
bridge
answer.
gap,
Because we got those folks out there.
Well, I feel like it's been brought to our attention now, and it's critical, and God forbid something does happen, that we should have our ducks in a row. And so maybe next meeting, we come back with a recommendation and talk about it when Mike's here, and
what's that? When are you?
When's the next meeting?
August 1st.
I have to get back to you. I got something going on that day, and I cannot remember where it is for the life of me right now.
Okay.
I don't know if it's in the daytime or the nighttime.
Sorry, don't mean to
I
put you on.
get back on the 31st for my trip. But I can't remember, something is going on the first day. I can't remember. what it is off the top of my head.
Even if he's not here, we can put together a list
Still
of
talk.
questions.
Yeah, we
Yeah,
can
let's do
get Mike
that.
engaged, encourage him to watch the video tonight.
All right.
Thank you, Scott.
Thank you
Yeah.
so much.
Did it answer all your questions?
Yep.
I think so.
Okay.
Except the big one of what we're gonna do.
That's
okay.
Well, but no, Jason brought up a
Just
good
kidding.
point, and we can make a bridge to get there, so.
Just kidding.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay,
Charter.
do you want to finish up the charter? Or do you want to go, move to, Jeff Tinley's here, for the executive session? I know it's getting late,
And I know Mr. and Mrs. Shorter sitting here, and you brought it up that you're gonna do something under First Selectmen's report, so
okay,
I would ask that we
okay,
maybe we go to your report and then,
okay, I'll do that report.
thank you.
Let me do that for you. Sorry for I didn't know that's why you were sitting here. Okay, progress report on the HR meeting, we'll do the, can we just do the selectmen's report, that's all right? Progress, report on the HR meeting, we're meeting Monday with the HR people, and we're gonna talk, and we'll have a report where they are at the next board meeting. East Flat Hill Road Bridge, moving ahead smoothly, it's going really well, much better than the last bridge. You saw a letter from the neighbor next to our public works storage area. I've reached out, I did ring your doorbell, nobody was home, but I sent an email, and we will sit down and go over what's going on up there and your concerns. And we'll get with Public Works and Planning, just got to put the timing. You work 6 to... No.
Would it be possible if I approach for just a second?
I'll recognize you for a second. Yes, yes. We don't normally, but you've been sitting here so long.
It's good to stand up, to be honest.
We're looking forward to it, too.
My name is David Short. I live at 71 Peter Road. I sent everybody on the board a letter about a situation that's been ongoing. I think it's pretty clear in the letter, our frustration. We feel that we've been misled with what we were initially told. There has been some back and forth with the first selectman, with other Selectman Naylor, and I understand we'll get together, and I look forward to that. I'm just concerned about, I again feel I've been misled, and my wife's been misled, that nothing occurs while we're waiting to meet.
It's in the planning commissions. We would
Okay.
have to approve anything we do. So we'll meet with you.
Okay.
We'll go over it and make sure everything is,
I just want to point out, I got an email from the Director of Public Works the other day.
Okay.
With you and Selectman Naylor on it, and he goes into the fact that nothing's been done except widening the road. He has no approvals, anything. Now there are tanks up there. There are large tanks, like 10,000 gallons.
oh, they're storing, no, those are,
Yeah, those
I
part
don't
of
even know
this
what that,
project?
I think that's the new brine tanks for down below, they're just storing them.
Okay, all
Yeah,
right.
that's all that is. That's
Okay.
not a fuel tank, that's just the.
All right, just keep in mind that your proposals are to put those size tanks next to our house.
Right. We'll go over that with you, and they'll go to planning, and we'll meet with you. It-
Just,
Yeah, I'll do
just
it.
to give you
Yep.
some background, and I heard a lot of people introduce themselves. My wife and I are both born and raised in Southbury, grew up on a farm. The farm is now owned by the town of Southbury. We've been around here a long time. I'm a retired police detective. I've been involved in a lot of situations that you've discussed. We look at this as you're putting a bomb next to our house. And this,
It's not on the agenda,
okay.
so we're really not supposed to get that far in depth. I'll meet with you.
All right,
We'll make
you're
sure-
putting it, though, in an area where you have a firing range.
We'll-
So
I'll-
you have pictures there, and we will get together. I just want an assurance that nothing's going to be approved or
Yes.
started.
Right, it's gotta go through
Because
planning
we
before-
get rumors from the town employees who are telling us they're just moving forward with it. Then they're gonna put a building up.
Employees do say things, it's got to go through planning through 824, it's a statute. So,
But what the employees have said so far, Mr. First Selectman, is coming to fruition. So,
we'll-
thank you, and thank you for allowing me to talk.
okay,
Thank you.
okay. Okay, there's a heat wave coming this weekend. We are keeping the library open on Sunday for a cooling center, so it's open on Saturday. So it's going to be open 12 to 5 p.m. Limited staffing, so there's not going to be any, like, you can't check books out. You can't. It's just opening up, monitoring it, and for a cooling center. Pool committee met again with the engineers, discussing from a major overhaul of the pool to best design, and we're still looking at that. We hope August 1st to have the new corporal on board and the CRO for the Greater Heritage Village area in place by August 1st. I just want to say, there was a comment about shelving the economic development, or the strategic plan. Nobody's looking to shelve the strategic plan. That's not happening. I think that was a comment made during public comment, and that's not happening. The EDC director, we've been moving forward with that. Some good candidates, and I think we have to do one more interview on the 22nd, and that was a scheduling thing, and we will interview them then. Okay.
One
So
quick comment about the heat wave. Maybe, I know we're real good about the e-alerts, but could we maybe do a code red to let the seniors know that the senior center's gonna be open? Is that we still subscribe, right?
yeah, we do, yeah.
So the code red, to do a code red, to let them know that that's a service available to them? Yeah. Yeah. You know?
So we can do that tomorrow, Betsy? Thank you. All right. Do you want to go into executive session, or Jeff is here, waiting patiently?
Jeff's here, I don't know, I think there's still, are there still people here that want to hear about the charter? Okay. So.
Done with the charter.
Then to.
I'd like to listen to the charter, but I'm willing to come back if you're going to talk about it.
No, we'll come back to finish it after we meet with executive session. Our attorney is sitting here, if that's okay with you. That's okay?
That's very fiscally prudent of you.
All right.
What?
We'll be efficient.
Oh, you know what, they have to wait, that's right.
Oh, no, let's just do it.
Why don't we just do the.
Do the charter. Okay. Okay, where were we, Betsy?
Page 7.
Moving right along.
We are at 6:03. Emergency Management. Director of Emergency Management
Those look good.
to be appointed and removed by majority vote of the Board of Selectmen. Right? Is that 6:03? So the change, so it's going from the first selectman to the majority vote of the Board of Selectmen. I think this is similar to the same
Make it
thing.
uniform. Yeah.
Right. So I'm okay with it.
What about the assistant deputy? Should that be in here too?
I think we're getting, I don't know.
Is that getting
I
into
think
the
the
weeds?
department head would fire his assistant, no?
Well, we don't have an
No,
assistant.
I don't mean as like administrative, I meant like the assistant deputy, like what Scott is.
That's a volunteer.
So no mention, I mean, kinda, I don't know, it's not there, so I just making a suggestion.
I mean, the deputy emergency management is generally a volunteer.
That's who we've always given a stipend to in the past.
A volunteer?
No, the director of emergency management, right, has always been
That's-
a stipend
right,
oriented kind of thing.
Right.
Maybe I'm looking too much into it, but
What's that? Okay.
Just reading the next section.
So
sorry.
the change would be a majority vote of the Board of Selectmen and maybe appointment and may be removed by a majority vote of the Board of Selectmen instead of the first selectman for cause. So, everybody okay with that?
I'm fine with it.
Fine with it? Good?
You're fine.
Good? I'm good with it? Okay. Next. Member of the Local Emergency Planning Commission to be a
Fine.
committee?
Fine.
And that, it sounds like that may be part of the
Yeah.
Director of Emergency Management headed it, so we're fine with that. Proposed budget be posted on the town's website.
Seems to
We
make
do
sense. It's there already.
There's already, so we're good with that.
Yeah.
Additional supplemental appropriations.
This is one I had asked about last time, if Dan, because I think Dan did talk to the Board of Finance.
We talked to the Board of Finance, and they said there's a materiality that they were expecting on this of $100,000 over a 5-year period.
I'm sorry, like a qualifier?
Yeah, so
Okay.
they're saying, it kind of handcuffs us to do anything, so they said it would have to be at least $100,000 to have to do the fiscal analysis.
So,
That makes more,
Yeah.
yeah, that makes more sense.
right,
That
that's
makes a lot
my
more sense.
concern.
Yeah.
Dan, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know if this came up, but I think, based on my time there, that this may well be a reaction to our experience with the historical preservation grants.
Yes. I think so.
Yes.
And in that light, I think it makes a lot of sense. As some background, in case you guys didn't know, when we took some of those to redo the South Britain Library, the level that the state requires you to go to get the funds is almost comically ridiculous. About, I think that little roof on that library ended up costing north of 10 grand, even though it's only a few squares, because that's what it costs to meet that standard.
I was
So,
involved with that.
yeah.
It was, a lot of it was just overdone.
Yeah.
The paint was
So the idea
some
here is to
crazy
make sure we're
number.
not taking any grants that are gonna cost us more than the grant actually gives us, which I
And-
think makes a lot of sense.
You should tell Michelle Zomer that then.
Well, she probably have
Clarify.
that background.
Yeah, well, I mean, it would be helpful to tell her so that she doesn't,
Well, yeah, I mean, the discussions have come around that, from different people I respect and kind of in this industry, you're better off doing it without the grant
Sometimes.
sometimes to get it done than it is to pay, it costs you more to do it with a grant.
That's what happened with the Oak Tree Bridge, I guess, too. We found it was cheaper to do it ourselves and go through the state.
And quicker, and that,
Yeah.
so where will we will put the,
$100,000 in there.
reference in there sometime in some period of time. Maybe you could get the language for us for the next one? Thank you.
okay. What's next?
But we
Next
do that.
is Code of Ethics.
We do that. That's what you do, right?
Oh, raised dollar threshold. Sorry, getting tired. Guess dinner's not at 9 o'clock tonight. We gonna go there? What section is that?
Section C.
It's just raising the thresholds, right?
Raising the threshold from 5,000 to 10,000.
It's fine, in
Fine.
my estimation.
Everybody else good?
Fine.
Okay,
Yeah,
so-
it seemed fine with me. That came from the Board of, I actually called John about this because this is something we added 5 years ago. We made it, the Board of Finance asked for 20, so I called John and we like, okay with 40? And it came from them, so.
So it's raising it to $40,000. Okay. And
Where
we're,
is that? Is that further down? Oh, there it is.
okay? We're all comfortable with that?
Yes.
I think we're
Yes.
comfortable with that. Okay. Oh, and 708. So all grant applications require the approval by a majority vote of the Board of Finance and the Board of Selectmen prior to submission. The only, I think there should be some kind of a, I'm just throwing out this, I think there may be a need for above a certain amount
Qualifier.
qualifier.
Yeah, like maybe
That's right,
50,000 or
that's right,
something.
you just said that, qualifier.
Well, the 100,000 was, I mean,
Probably need a qualifier about timing too. I think this one needs some thought, frankly. that it might get at a time better than 10 PM.
Yeah, yeah. But, so maybe, Dan, we could all come back with language for this one too, if you don't mind. Sorry. Thank you.
Yeah, but, you know, you could get, there could be a grant that you gotta get on and it's,
$3,000.
yeah, or $5,000 and it's a great idea and you're like.
We gotta wait 3 weeks. Oh, there's the grant.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's get some language for the next meeting. Okay. What's next? All officials? We did that, all officials in place? We do
I've
that?
done that many times
Thank,
already.
really? We make them sign that? Okay, so we're through the charter?
We are.
Nice.
Excellent. All right.
You all right?
What I wanted to hear. Yeah, no, I was very concerned about cost benefit analysis approaches.
Okay.
Sometimes that can require a lot of staff, absolutely a lot of work. And having done this before, it all comes down to the assumptions, because you can make it look how you want to make it look. Right? So you have to ask, you have to have tough people to ask tough questions.
Okay.
Thank you for your interest.
Next on the agenda, do you, would you like to,
Go to sleep.
where are we at? Where are we at? Move along. We moved that, we move first off,
Anybody have anything?
I
Because I have zero.
no report.
I
No,
just
we
have
have
the one
zero.
follow-up. I just have the one follow-up to that Anti-Defamation League. The
Okay.
woman's willing to come August 1st. Do we want her to come, just to talk to us?
That's fine.
Not gonna cost us any money.
sure.
Okay.
Gonna pitch us?
Do we want to, how long is that going to, I'm just thinking,
15
on
minutes.
August 1st, we need to go through and make all the
Yeah, maybe it
recommendations
should be-
back to charter?
Yeah.
Or we can do it like earlier, like 6:30 every, like, I don't know, I'm just wondering how long that presentation is going to be and what else is on the agenda, that's all.
I just feel
We
like
have August 1st. What's the next date after that?
the 15th.
15.
15th? Okay.
I'll see what you
Let's
can
do the 15th. We should have that. Okay.
So her to come day 15,
That'd
just to
be
talk to
better.
us and everything.
That'd be
Okay, I'll
better.
tell her to coordinate with you. Okay.
We'll dispense with the reports from liaisons. Other than that, I don't think we'll have any other business.
No.
Do we have any other business? All
Motion to
right.
go into executive session to discuss pending litigation related to town open
Got a
space.
second on
Kennedy
that?
Road.
Second?
Made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And it carries.
Invite Jeff Tinley. Can put that in the minutes.